Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of the Football Experience brought to you by On the Pod. I'm Caleb, he's Nev. Nev, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Um, yeah, no, it is. And I'm excited for this one because this one's a special edition because at the end of last pod, we were sort of talking, coming up with ideas, and you go on holiday to one of those lovely Croatian beaches for a week tomorrow. So we thought we'd give the people something that we've been thinking about doing for a while now, and that is putting together our first, second, and third teams of I did it of the last 18 years. I believe you did it of the last 20 years. And it's interesting because within that we can sort of tell the story of football from that time, which is really the time where we became huge fans of football and watched, I don't know, copious amounts of football and just sort of became addicted to it. Which I'm very looking forward to a lot. Going diving deeper in it because for the last like 3 or 4 days, I have just been down a rabbit hole, just going deeper and deeper, finding these little interesting tidbits that I'd even forgotten about or didn't even know in a lot of cases. So before I go through what my process was to get to my three teams of what I picked was the last 18 years, I believe you did the last 20 years. But before I go through that process, I just wanted to ask you what your process was to come to the conclusion and the teams that you eventually arrived at.
Well, firstly, the reason why I went for 20 years was because I just think it's a nice round number. You know those people that when they're doing the volume on the TV, you can't leave it on like 18 or 19 or whatever it
That is
has.
me.
Yeah, look, I like yeah, okay, yeah, you can leave it on 18 if it's going up by increments of 1,
Yeah.
but I like to leave it on a nice round number generally. So I went 20, and also I went 20 because it coincides with a World Cup year. So I can include the World Cup of 2002, considering we're going into a World Cup this year. And technically, we should have had the World Cup. I think it would have concluded by now as well. Um, so that's why I went 20 years. In regards to my criteria, I went mostly like off of eye test. And then obviously the other important things like titles, longevity, and also at certain periods of time, was that player considered the best in their position for not just 1 year, but like maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Um, and that was, I guess, my criteria. But like eye test is probably one of the like determining factors for me.
Yeah, and it was definitely high on my list as well. So I guess the first thing we need to address is sort of the discrepancy there'll be between our teams. Because I went for the last 18 years, so starting the 04-05 season, which I believe is the first season where I was really fanatical about football. I mean, I loved it beforehand, but I think I just took it up to a new level that year. So I got to watch a lot of football in that time. But like you say, that takes away the '02 World Cup and the '04 Euros, and um, I believe it may have taken another copper out for me. But so there's a few players who might make your teams, but don't make my teams just because they came around too early for me, for them to be on top of their games or have accomplishments taken into consideration for my teams. But my process was obviously a lot of eye tests as well. But my starting point was, all right, I'm just going to list through all of the best European club sides that we've had since the start of the 04-05 season. So, which is normally the Champions League winners, obviously. There's a few um, anomalies in there who didn't win a Champions League, say Juve through the 2010s, Bayern under Pep. Um, there's a few teams that had short peaks. So if we're taking my version from 0405 into consideration, AC Milan at the very start was a pretty short peak. Barca had different iterations of itself. You had the Ferguson United at the end. You had Inter under Mourinho, which was really a one season thing. Um, Dortmund under Klopp. So the list goes on. And then from there, obviously, you've got to take into account the big tournaments. So you look at the World Cups, you look at Euros, and I looked at Copa Americas. I didn't really look at any Asian Cups or AFCONs. Um, I don't know. I just feel like they're almost substandard continental competitions. I know that might be a bit elitist to say, but for me, they just don't factor as highly as the other two, and that's unlucky for obviously African and Asian players. But I only had one Asian player who even made my shortlist, which was Son Heung-min, and he didn't make it far into it. And I only had, I believe, at this stage, and we're going to discuss some things. So the third team, full disclosure, my third team isn't completely decided yet, but I only had one African player make one of my first two teams as well. So yeah, they're the major tournaments that I looked at, and then obviously you think about those teams in your head, and you think, all right, who were the great players from those teams, the players who made the difference, the players who were considered the most important players of those teams, and then from there you get your shortlist, and my shortlist ended up being nearly 200 players. So from that point, I just want to read the list of names who I cut straight away before like doing an even deeper dive. Just thinking about their accomplishments and the way they play, and whether they had enough longevity or whatever it was to make it to the next point. So players such as Jan Oblak, Donnarumma, Lloris, Julio Cesar, Ter Stegen, Azpilicueta, Alexandro, Gary Cahill made my shortlist, but he won a lot of honors, but eye test wise, just wasn't good enough to really make it. Koulibaly, De Rossi, Son, Essien, Marquinhos, Matic, Gundogan, Henderson, Verratti, Eduardo Vargas. Never did it at the club level, but had a really good stretch for Chile in the 15 and 16 Copa America wins that they won back to back. Ivan Perisic, Mario Mandzukic, Robinho, likewise in the '07 Copa America, was on fire. And interestingly enough, that's one of the little stories that I found, that before that Copa America, which is a continental title, both Ronaldinho and Kaká asked manager Dunga to be left out of the squad. That's something that I just couldn't remember from the time. So that was something I found really interesting. It'd be interesting to see how we would have reacted had that happened nowadays. Um, but yeah, so and then there was Sterling, Zabaleta, Jorginho, Firmino, Falcao, Xhaka, Vardy, Giroud, Mario Gomez, Hamšík, James, Gorkov, and Alejandro Gomez. A lot of them are sort of cult figures. You think of Alejandro Gomez, never really could win anything, but did wonders with that Atalanta team, getting him to the Champions League season after season. Johan Gorkov was sensational in the 08-09 season, but that was really all he had. James, the 14 World Cup. And Vardy obviously for that Leicester title winning, but just not good enough to be in real contention for a place in one of the three teams. But I mean, that's a pretty good list. I don't know if any of those names sort of piqued your interest and maybe even got more serious consideration from you in for your three teams.
Um, some of those names like crossed my mind, but they weren't really up there because I think I mentioned like what were those were those players at any point considered like the best or the second best in the world, And all those players that you mentioned, but besides Robinho, because Robinho was like that wonder kid, sort of like you know how the Brazilians have that well, not really the Brazilians, it's more the reporters. Whenever they see a talented Brazilian, they're like, oh, it's the next Pele.
Yeah.
And he was branded with that, especially when he first came to Europe. So, but he never lived up to his potential, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, so we could agree on that at least, and then sort of the next phase was looking at players who maybe peaked a little bit too early to make the list from starting 0405, or players who had major accomplishments that occurred before this time frame. So I'm looking at players like Cafu, Zanetti, probably, although he's still a question mark. He'll probably come up into discussion later. Ashley Cole, having to take out that Invincibles team really sort of killed his argument for me, even though he was still fantastic for Chelsea later on. Maldini, I mean, a lot of his accomplishments came in even the late '80s, so that's crazy to think. Alessandro Nesta, Lucio, Cannavaro, Vieira, Makaleli. I did put Pirlo on this list, but full disclosure, he did make one of my teams, so he shouldn't be on that list anymore. Paul Scholes, Thierry Henry with a question mark, but ultimately he is in this list for too early. Michael Ballack. Roman Riquelme had an awesome '05 to '07, but not enough to make the list. Ronaldinho question mark. He will come up. Ryan Giggs, Shevchenko, and Zinedine Zidane. I all thought were too early. Now, this is the bit that's interesting because you have an extra 2 years and you started from that '02 World Cup. So I'm interested to hear, without giving too much away, how many of those players have made your list or were in real consideration to make your three teams?
A couple of those made the lists.
Yeah,
Um, I will give full disclosure, and I guess I'll reveal the surprise. It's not really a surprise. I didn't include Zidane just because France fell out of the group stage in '02 in the World Cup. He had an okay Euros, but I think France got knocked out in the quarters, if I'm not mistaken. So they didn't even make the semis in '04, and it doesn't include his Champions League win, which
yeah.
was I think '01. And yes, he had a fantastic run at the '06 World Cup. But other than that run in the '06 World Cup, I think he only won like a La Liga and a Copa del Rey, so there wasn't anything. And like even from '02 '03, he was still on the tail end of his career. So if this was the last 30 years, some of those
There's no
play,
doubt.
yeah, he would be in the first team.
Yeah.
And some of those players would be in the first team as well, but some drop down to the second or third team. So yeah, that just giving the disclosure and the reasoning on Zidane now early. But yeah, if it was 30 years, he'd definitely be in the first team.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. And yeah, taking out those Champions League titles kills his case a little bit, obviously, even for you. My main memory of him at that Euros that you were talking about was the two late goals against England that absolutely crushed him in that '04 Euros. But yeah, I don't remember France having much of an impact after that. So
Yeah, even if we
and
go 25 years, like that would include his
yeah,
'98 World Cup and the 2000 Euros. So then, yeah, even 25 years, he makes the team, and even someone like Ronaldo as well, not
yeah,
Cristiano. Ronaldo doesn't make the team. I'm not sure
yeah,
if you
no way.
mentioned him, but even though he won, I think he scored 8 goals at the World Cup. But again, he was on the tail end of his career. Didn't win a Champions League. Yes, he won a World Cup. Didn't do much. And then yeah, but if this was 25 or 30 years, he'd be in the first team.
Uh, I don't know. Well, he probably would be in the first team, but I don't know. I wouldn't say it with my chest. But
He,
Ronaldo in my list, Il Fenomeno,
mm,
he his only achievement of note was breaking Gerd Muller's World Cup Finals goal scoring record, which later got broken by Miroslav Klose. So in my time frame, Ronaldo didn't even make my shortlist because there wasn't really much to think about in terms of what he did from '04, '05 onwards. But his greatest season was, I believe, that 90. I
99, I
want to say
think.
90. Yeah,
Or,
96, 97, or 97,
or
98. I think he scored nearly 50 goals for Barcelona. And if
mm.
you look at the compilation of those goals, they are special. He was something else that season.
But even so,
That was
like if you go 30 years, I know he was part of the '94 World Cup team. He was part of the squad.
yeah.
I don't think he was part of the necessary starting or playing every game. But he has two World Cups to his name as well. He has a couple of Copa Americas, and
Well,
he's
and it's
and even to this day, people consider him better
I
than
know.
like the best, one of the best players ever. But unfortunately, injury struck him, and yeah.
Well, that and the Brazilian thing. I don't know. For some reason, Brazilians have it's the highest peak out of any nationality, but it's the shortest peak, it seems. I think, they just seem to have these short peaks that don't last too long. So,
No, but
but yeah, no,
you know what I also read with him? Apparently, he has some kind of I don't know if it's necessarily considered disease or a hormonal thing where I think he can't process food, so he ends up
yeah, yeah, I
keeping the
heard that.
food on, like keeping the weight on. It's very very hard for him to keep it off. So like not only just the injuries that, because I think he had an ACL injury or something, didn't he? So he had very serious injuries, and then also on top of that, he um, can't keep the weight off. Maybe Hazard has that condition as well.
Well, he's one who did make the shortlist.
Oh,
And then after the too early, obviously it's natural to go for players who maybe are too late for the list. They haven't racked up enough seasons. They haven't put enough seasons in the bank at the very top. So in that list, I had players like Allison, Edison, Trent, but he might come up in conversation later because I was looking at that position for third team. João Cancelo, Hakimi, Robertson, Alfonso Davies, Virgil van Dijk, Ruben Diaz. De Bruyne I initially put on this list, but he will come up in conversation. Fabinho. I really like Milan Skriniar. Maybe some people would not think he's worthy of this list. Bernardo Silva, or especially what he did last season, was fantastic. Harry Kane, Romelu Lukaku, Vinny Jr., Goretzka, De Ligt, and De Jong. And they're the players that I had were too late. They haven't put enough in the bank yet to make. I don't. And again, do you? I'd like to hear if you have any qualms or if you have any of those players that were seriously considered for your teams. I know De Bruyne probably is. That's why I took him off that list eventually. But if any of those other players sort of had your ears pricking up,
nah. I considered a lot of those players, like a lot of the ones that I guess have been the best over the past 2 or 3 seasons. But no, I didn't include a lot of them, just
yeah,
because they don't have, like you said, they don't have that time in the bank. Um, Whereas if we make this list in 5 years' time, then a lot of them will probably replace a lot of these guys that have made my list, possibly.
yeah, I can agree with that. If they go on and continue to perform the way they've been performing, then yeah, a lot of those, especially those City and Liverpool players, as we're talking in this present moment, if they continue with that form, you'd think, yeah, 5 years time we'll be looking at maybe different teams. Um, and so I wanted the next stage was I also wanted to sort of, because everyone's going to have like a different criteria, obviously, and the main criteria that I wanted to fulfill and sort of take into account both sides of the argument was peak versus longevity. So I personally, I'm more, especially if we're doing best team of the last 18 years, I'm a lot more of a longevity guy, but I wanted to rattle off the names who had peak arguments to be in a team. So when their peak season or their peak couple of seasons really, for some people, might have put them in strong contention to be in one of the three teams. So in no particular order, I had Maicon from the 09-10 season for Inter, probably the best right back in the world around that time. Was fantastic that season, but we didn't really hear much of him after that point. Alfonso Davies in 1920 was somewhat a revelation at left back. The physicality and the pace that he could show at that time, and obviously he's one who's on the too late list as well. So to be decided in terms of what he does with his career. Virgil van Dijk, 18-19, and you could probably even put last season, but 18-19 was really his peak, and he was something special around that time. Ruben Diaz for the last two seasons, his peak has been really high, obviously. Marquinhos last season, I don't think he'd get yourself into contention just because PSG only won Ligue 1 last season, maybe the French domestic cup as well, but I thought his standard was really high that season. Fabio Cannavaro, 05-06, obviously Ballon d'Or winner. Interestingly, he didn't actually win the World Cup Golden Ball because Zidane won that, and rightly so, because Zidane was comfortably the best player at that World Cup. Even when I look at it now, I don't even think Cannavaro should have won that award, but I mean, he was pretty fantastic in that World Cup. Michael Essien from 05-07, maybe even a bit more before that at Lyon, but he was pretty fantastic in those early Mourinho Chelsea teams. As I've already said, Juan Roman Riquelme from 05-07 gets Villarreal to a Champions League semi-finals. Unfortunately, he misses the penalty that could have sent them to the finals. Obviously, fortunately for you, because you're an Arsenal supporter. And then he moved to Boca Juniors in 07, and obviously, the Copa Libertadores back then was a two-legged final, and he won man of the match in both legs of the final. So I just thought that was pretty extraordinary and worth mentioning. Kaká from 05-07. Do I really need to say more? He'll probably come up in conversations later. Yaya Toure in 13-14. I believe only Frank Lampard is a midfielder who scored 20 goals in the league. Other than Yaya Toure, he was sensational that season. Leon Goretzka in 1920. Bernardo Silva last season. We've been waxing lyrical on this pod about him. Angel Di Maria in 13-14 for Real Madrid, sort of playing as like the left-sided central midfielder, making overlapping runs. I thought he was fantastic and somewhat opened my eyes to a new role of central midfielder. As I already said, Eduardo Vargas in that 15-16 Copa for Chile, Robinho in the 07 Copa, James in the 14 World Cup. Ronaldinho will obviously come up in more conversations, so I don't need, and so will Benzema, I imagine. But Benzema last season, I've talked about statistically how great he was. Wesley Schneider from 09-10, Johan Gorkov 08-09, Bordeaux winning Ligue 1 back then. I thought he was fantastic. Diego Milito from 09-10, again, fantastic. Gonzalo Higuain scored, I think, 35 or so goals in Serie A in 15-16 for Napoli. That Napoli team actually finished, I think, on 91 points. Wasn't enough to win the league, obviously, but worth mentioning for a peak. Jamie Vardy, 15-16. Obviously, that Leicester team winning that title goes down as one of the greatest achievements we've seen. Diego Forlan from 08-10, and maybe even a little bit before, but especially 08-10, he put himself in serious contention for a spot on the third team with just how ridiculous the awards he was winning in that peak were. And then De Ligt in 18-19, along with De Jong on that Ajax team, I thought they were both fantastic. Suarez will come up more, and Diego Costa from 2013 to 2015, winning titles for Atletico and then Chelsea, and helping Atletico get to that Champions League final where unfortunately he was injured and couldn't really partake in the game. But so they're all the peak arguments, and some of those players in those seasons were just fantastic. But a lot of them, I guess the theme is a lot of them were one season sort of things. I look at a Wesley Sneijder, I look at a Diego Milito. I even, for the purposes of this list, I look at Cannavaro, even Raquelme. So, yeah, for me, a lot of those players didn't make the teams and didn't even really get considered. But if people want to go off the peak argument, a lot of those players might be in serious consideration. So, were there any names that you can think of that I missed, or any that you want to wax on a little bit more about because you were just, as a fan, so excited by what they were doing at their peak?
The Schneider one, like he had, like because I remember in 2010, there was a massive argument that he should have won the Ballon d'Or. Because even during that 2010 World Cup, I think he was the highest goal scorer for Netherlands, and I think he was like the equal highest goal scorer at the World Cup. That he didn't take home the golden shoe just because I think he had like less assists or something, or it was done in more game time, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think there was four who were level for that golden boot,
yeah,
and I think they should all get a golden boot really because you scored the same amount of goals, so it
yeah,
does make sense to
but
me.
then obviously, like, if you score 5 goals in 3 matches, then that's worth more than five
Yeah,
goals in 5 matches.
yeah,
So yeah,
true.
but look, like that one's obviously like, and that Inter team, like with Melito and like even
Mm.
I'm not sure if you are going to go into or mention the name Eto as well. He was one that was a very, very strong contender for my team, but the thing is, like, midfielders and strikers, they just seem stacked. Like,
Mm.
and like just there's just those more forward players like that. Like, whereas like for defenders, I personally found defenders a little bit harder to fill the roles. Maybe that's just because in my mind, and probably in other people's minds, like it's the attackers that grab all the headlines. So that's probably why maybe from memory I struggled a little bit more with the defenders. But yeah, like in regards to like those 1 or 2 season wonders, like where they had those peaks of 1 or 2 seasons as opposed to having peaks of 5, 6, 7, 10 seasons. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate that they have to miss out. Like Forlan as well. Like, I think he had a fantastic 2010 World Cup as well with Uruguay.
Well, he won. Yeah, he won the golden ball, which is no mean feat. That's a big deal because that's one of those
And they
ones
and
that
they
you're
and they
like
finished third, or did they finish fourth?
the. They might have finished fourth. They
Yeah, I
might
think
have lost
Germany
that
beat.
third place
It was
playoff.
Germany. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Germany might have
yeah,
beaten them.
yeah.
So
You're right. They did.
yeah, so like there you go as well. Like and oh man, Raquelme as well. Like that's like yeah, he had the
Oh, he was so good.
yeah, and like he had an amazing '06 World Cup as well.
Yeah,
And then obviously his time at Villarreal as well. But yeah, look, there's longevity on does play a part in this. So and like maybe if you went, oh, it's that as well. Like he didn't win any leagues. I think even when he was at Barca, he didn't win any leagues. Um, and yeah, there isn't many achievements or titles to his name, which is unfortunate because he was a fantastic player.
yeah, I get that. And when you dig deeper into the true candidates, and then you start seeing maybe one player's achievements don't stack up against another player, then like your decision's made a little bit easier. So I definitely get that point, and that's probably why Raquelme didn't really stay in contention for a team. Um, before we leave the peaks, because we were talking about him just before, and I had a quiz question for you. I'll ask it anyway, but I think you should get it now that we were talking about it. Um, but between '08 and 2019, only two players, and they're both from the same country, won the Golden Shoe other than Messi or Ronaldo. Do you know who they were? So the Golden Shoe is a European top goal scorer from the top leagues in Europe.
Um, Suarez is one of
Yep,
them.
that's one. Yep. So
And
now you know the country as well.
you said same country, so I'm guessing Forlan.
Yep. Forlan in '06, I believe, was equal with Thierry Henry. And then '08, '09 for Atletico, he won another one. So he's got two golden shoes, which I know one came before the Messi and Ronaldo era, but one came during it. And that's no mean feat.
Yeah.
So that's why he got serious consideration for a spot on one of the teams. But ultimately, his club career, he didn't, like you say with Riquelme, he didn't quite do enough to push right to the end. Um, and then there was one last sort of consideration I took before I started putting the teams onto paper, and that consideration was players sort of correcting other players. And what I mean by that is players who came along or who went before, who sort of had the accomplishments, had maybe a similar style of play, usually played in the same positions, but maybe had more accomplishments or had better statistics if we're talking strikers, who sort of corrected the positioning of the other player. And I know this will probably cause some debate. So before we go into our teams, I want to sort of go through that process of what I had listed here. And the first one I know is going to cause controversy straight away. But I believe that Xavi and Xabi Alonso, and particularly Xabi Alonso, corrected Sergio Busquets. I'm pretty sure that will have probably pushback from you, but definitely from listeners because of what Sergio Busquets accomplished in the game. Um, do you have pushback on that, or do you want me to keep going through the list?
So, Han, just elaborate more on the corrected, as in like
Okay, so
kept him out of the team, or
he
gained
has.
more plaudits, or what?
I'll explain why he kept him out of the team. I'll do it now anyway. So Busquets hasn't made any of my three teams, which I know will
Really?
cause controversy straight away. Yeah, I know that will. But what I wanted to do with my teams, and while I know I have a lot of Barcelona, a lot of Real Madrid, and a lot of Spain players, a lot of World Cup winners, and players from those great teams, I have a lot of. But I did want to try my best to sort of get a representation of most of the really top teams that we've had in the last 18 years. And when I looked at it and I saw the players who I already had who played in the same teams as Busquets, that's why I came to the conclusion to leave him out. Like, could he have got into the third team? Definitely. He was in contention for that. But I just wanted a better cross representation of the different teams and the different sort of players from different countries, different teams, whatever it may be in the teams, to really represent what had happened in the 18 years uh, that we're talking about. What I mean by like corrected is so they obviously do a similar job, and in the 2010 World Cup and I believe in the 2012 Euros, they actually played a double pivot next to each other anyway. But the thing for me was Xabi Alonso was already good enough. And I know Marcos Senna was a big part of that '08 Euro team, but so was Xabi Alonso. So Xabi Alonso was already good enough in terms of dictating tempo, range of passing, defensive work to help Spain win a Euros in '08 before Busquets even came. And then for me, Xabi Alonso did it at three different sort of top clubs that we've seen or top teams that we've seen in the last 18 years. So for me, when I take all that into consideration, And the fact that, yes, I know Busquets is fantastic and he's won pretty much everything there is to win. And he's been a big part of those Spain and Barcelona teams that have been fantastic. He's never moved from Barcelona. I haven't seen him do it in another league. I haven't seen him even do it on another team. And is that his fault? No, because why would you leave Barcelona? But for me, that just sort of is a little ding on Busquets and sort of corrects him a little bit in terms of his positioning in the teams for me. And I hope that sort of elaborated on what I mean by a player correcting another player, you know?
Yeah, I get that, but yeah, look, we'll once we start getting into the teams and the players, then there'll be, I guess, more explanations or whatnot. But I sort of get what you're saying, and I don't know. I don't really want to push back on it now. Like I'd rather push back on decisions once we start going through the teams. That's
fair. Okay, but you sort of understand what I mean by a player correcting another player. They're playing similar style, similar position.
Yeah, and but the thing is, like, even with that Spain team, like, dude, like, for instance, Fabregas didn't make my team, any of them.
No, he made my shortlist, but he didn't really push hard to be in any three of the teams.
And because the thing, and like David Silva as well, like,
David Silva was the next one I was going to say.
That Spain midfield was absolutely stacked. Like, but the thing is with David Silva, though, I'm pretty sure he was in the starting 11 in during that World Cup run, and then obviously in the 2012 Euros. So he could have an argument.
I don't know if it was the World Cup run, but it was definitely a big part of at least the 12 Euros, if not the 08 Euros as well.
I'm pretty sure he was in that 2010, or he was like the first person to come off the bench alongside Fabregas. So like him and Fabregas were like that 12th man from memory. But yeah, like that midfield was stacked, and like it's a shame. And like even for instance, someone and this isn't an Arsenal sort of thing, but even someone like Arteta, because from memory, I think it was either 08 or it was 2010. Like Arteta had a really good season with Everton, and then I think he was named in that initial like 25 or 26 man squad before they cut it to 23 with Spain. Or he was named in like some friendlies before the tournament, and I think he had like this back injury from memory, so that kept Arteta out of the squad. And Arteta was like, he was a very similar player to, I guess, like a Xavi or a Xabi, and like that's as well another player who was very good, but he never even got a cap for Spain as well. And like that one chance that he was about to get a cap, he gets injured.
Yeah, that's definitely surprising that he didn't get a cap.
Because I remember there was debates because I think he has English citizenship, so I think there was debates into whether for England to cap him, but he never even got capped. But that was discussion. I'm not sure whether he has citizenship or not, but there was a discussion just because he never got capped for Spain.
Yeah. Look, you might be pushing it a bit with bringing Arteta's name into.
It's not because he's Arsenal manager right now or because he played for. It's just one of those stories from when back then that I remember. Because I remember I just remember that midfield being so stacked that it kept players out that should have at least been capped.
Yeah. It puts it into perspective how good that midfield was, and I'm sure our teams will do that as well. And if I just rattle off the list of players corrected other players, and just jump in when you feel obliged to jump in. But I have Rooney sort of somewhat corrects Harry Kane. Arturo Vidal, for me, corrects Paul Pogba. I think they do similar jobs, and I just think Vidal went on to better things. That might be because Pogba took a wrong move and went to United.
Rooney and Kane there's no question or arguments there. Kane doesn't touch any of these three squads.
Harry Kane's already scored like 180 Premier League goals,
Doesn't matter.
which
He's not at this current point in time. He's not touching or even being
he
compared to Rooney for me.
Yeah, look. I'll say that Harry Kane wasn't in serious consideration for any three of the teams, but his statistics have been fantastic so far.
Yeah,
And
like sure, but
if he played for a United, he'd probably already be touching Wayne Rooney, and might be on his way to surpassing Wayne Rooney. But for now,
he has
Wayne
more
Rooney
England
corrects
goals,
Harry
doesn't
Kane.
he?
I bel
I'm pretty sure he overtook Rooney for
Did
England.
Kane surpass Rooney for England top English goal scorer
I think
already?
he did, but with like 3 goals against San Marino or some crap like that, like
Yeah, but
a month or
Rudy would
two
have had his
ago.
chance to score against shitty teams as well.
Yeah, true, but
But
yeah,
as it stands, Rudy's still got more goals, and obviously he's got all the accolades of playing with United and what comes with that. Um, Philip Lahm corrects Joshua Kimmich. I think they're basically the
what?
same player.
No,
Joshua
Kimmich
Kimmich's still got a
Kimmich doesn't
career in
touch
front of
this.
him.
Yeah, Kimmich doesn't touch this. Why are you even bringing him into the debate?
You just
Comparing
brought
him to
up Mikel
Lam.
Arteta.
No, I didn't bring him up to say that he even got a consideration for the squads. I was bringing him up more to point out how stacked that Spain midfield was. That
No, I know, I
that
know. I know.
not that he was going to be
Look,
even considered. He doesn't even get considered for like a sixth team if I had one. So, but like, nah, you can't compare Kimmich to Lam. Come on,
Kimmich not considered for a 6-2. I think that's a bit harsh.
nah.
Do you know? All right. Do you know how many Champions League titles Phil Lahm won?
Was it 2
One.
or? It's
Joshua
it,
Kimmich has as many Champions League titles already. He's only one league title off as many as Philip Lahm.
does he have a World Cup?
And well, that's the thing. I'm sure he's working on. And he's only one FIFA Pro World 11 away from equaling Philip Lahm. So
But
I'm not. That's what I'm saying. He's been corrected by Philip Lahm for now.
but
But I'm
the
saying
other
they're the same
thing,
type of player,
the
and
other
that instantly puts Kimmich into context because you've got a player who pretty much did the same things.
yeah, but the other thing with Kimmich is that I don't necessarily see him as a right back. I see him as a midfielder,
Yeah,
like
but
a ball playing midfielder.
Lam was the same way because under Guardiola he moved into midfield.
Yeah,
Remember?
on the tail end of his career. But
Anyway,
if you're gonna bring Lam, if you're gonna here's the thing: if you're gonna put Lam into your teams, he's playing right back. He's not playing midfield. For me, if you're gonna put Kimmich in your team, if we do this in 5 years' time, Kimmich's playing midfield. He's not playing right back.
yeah, in 5 years' time. But for now, if I'm going to put Kimmich in a team, he'd be right back because that season he played right back that they won the Champions League, which is his greatest accomplishment so far. He was a right back and he was fantastic there. And I think we touched on it in one of the pods, how I just don't really like him playing holding midfielder because I think he's a world-class right back, but not necessarily a world-class central midfielder. He's a very good
World
one.
class. World
Exactly, that's what
class.
I'm saying. He's not a world-class central midfielder.
He's not even a world class right back.
Who are the world class right backs right now? João Cancelo and Trent. Who are the other ones?
Walker,
Maybe Hakimi on his day.
Walker as well.
I still prefer Kimmich over Walker.
I'd take Walker
Anyway.
over Kimmich.
Anyway, Sergio Ramos corrects Rafael Varane. Played in the same teams, and Ramos was clearly the leader of them. So I think that one's pretty obvious. Tony Cruz, for me, corrects Bastian Schweinsteiger. And Bastian Schweinsteiger was awesome, but Kroos has the World Cup to his name, and then he also has the three-peat in the Champions League. So I don't think that one's much of an argument either.
Does Cruz have 6
maybe
Champions Leagues?
he has the one with Bayern, but he didn't. I don't think he was there for the first one with Real Madrid.
I thought he was. Because didn't Mourinho bring him in? And then he won the first one with Real. Because Bayern won their one before you had that Spanish domination of Real, Barca, Real. So I'm pretty sure he has 6, doesn't he?
Yeah, you might be right on that. I think he came through. So definitely correct Schweinsteiger either way.
Yeah, well,
Maybe the only
I
thing you
agree
could
with
say
that.
is, and we'll talk more about Cruz because I'm sure he made both of our teams, at least one of them. The only thing you could say is Schweinsteiger could maybe play more positions when he was younger, but that's it.
Hmm.
For me, Iniesta obviously corrects David Silva. This one might be a little bit controversial, but Lewandowski for me corrects Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who in turn corrects Edinson Cavani. So for that reason, it was tough for me to find a spot for Ibrahimovic, but we'll go into that later. Thomas Muller for me corrects both Lampard and Özil. Neymar corrects Ribery. Puyol and Ramos correct PK for me, and that's a similar thing to the Busquets argument, and I'm sure that will come up later in the teams. Suarez corrects Diego Costa. This one we might have a little more discussion on, but for me, I put it down as Jerome Boateng corrects Mats Hummels for me, but we might have more discussion on that later. Xabi Alonso for me corrects Andrea Pirlo. That one might cause a bit of uproar. This one killed me a little bit, or not killed me, but it's true. But I just love the player who got corrected, and that's Modric corrects Ivan Rakitic.
Yeah.
Godin corrects Vincent Company. Benzema corrects Drogba. Uh, I don't know if I stayed with that one because the next one I had was Benzema corrects Rooney. And what I mean by that is like
Ooh.
Wayne Rooney, when he played for those United teams that won back EPLs and won the Champions League in that time and made another Champions League final, he wasn't the main man, obviously, because Ronaldo was still there. Benzema similarly, and it was again to Ronaldo, was playing second or third fiddle to Ronaldo and Bale. But Benzema won more Champions Leagues in that time. Granted, he didn't win as many league titles until recently, but for me, that alone, and if you look at Rooney's stats, he only hit 20 Premier League goals in 2 seasons, and those 2 seasons they didn't win the title. I believe it was 2012 and 2010. He scored. I think one of those seasons he got into the high 20s, but they still didn't win the title. So Rooney needed to be he somewhat needed to be a second fiddle to someone else, like we saw with Ronaldo, and then like we saw with Van Persie in that 2012-13 season. So, look, that one, I can tell by your reaction, causes a little bit of, gets your ears to prick up and listen to that. But for me, Benzema corrects Rooney. Aguero corrects Eden Hazard because I know they don't play the same positions, but in terms of what teams they've been on, Aguero has more Premier League titles and has been on better Premier League teams. Even though Eden Hazard has been on two great Chelsea teams and he's been the main man on them, Aguero has been the main man on what, five, probably all five of his Man City Premier League winning teams, if not the main man, 1B. This one we'll have a discussion about, but Rio Ferdinand, I thought corrected Thiago Silva just because of Ferdinand playing in the harder league and winning back titles in that league. And then they have the same amount of Champions Leagues, the same amount of Champions League runner ups. And then finally, David Villa for me corrects Antoine Griezmann because I think if Griezmann was at Atletico a season earlier and made the Champions League final that season as well as 2016, and then won the 2016 Euros, we'd have a bit more of a discussion. But he didn't, and David Villa won the '08 and the 2010 World Cup, the '08 Euros and the 2010 World Cup, and won a Champions League
And the
in
2012
2011.
Euros.
No, he didn't.
He
He's
didn't?
I don't even think he
Oh,
was in
he
the
might have been
squad. It
injured.
doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't come up on his
Ah.
achievements in the 2012.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, I remember that.
but still, he still won both of those. So they're my list of corrections. I'm sure we'll have more debates on a few of them when we go
Mm.
through the teams. But unless you have anything more to add, do you want to start with? Do you have a list of honourable mentions that you wanted to go through, or do you want to dive into the teams and then do them after?
Nah, I didn't really have a list of honorable mentions. Like you either made my list or you didn't. But actually, I don't. Was Drogba's name thrown out at all?
I said that Benzema corrected Drogba, and I think it was a
Because
lot similar to the Rooney argument in terms of Drogba.
what about
Drogba in
Torres?
those.
You didn't mention Torres at all.
Uh, I have him in a debate with those guys, but I think probably Drogba corrects Torres. But
Torres
at
had
the
a
same
higher
time,
peak, I
Torres,
think.
I would agree with that. Watching Fernando Torres in that 08, 07, 08, 09 range for Liverpool, he was unreal. Man of the match in that 08 Euro final, and obviously was there for all three of Spain's major triumphs. But wasn't really a main part in the other two, even though in 2012 he did score 3 goals and was equal top scorer in the competition. But I mean, 3 goals isn't really much to brag about. It's not much for a top goal scorer of a competition. Um, but yeah, I would think that the thing that Drogba had over Torres was Drogba had that one season in 2010 with Chelsea where he was unquestionably the main man. I think he scored 29 goals that season, and Chelsea scored over 100 goals. That might have been the season where Lampard also chipped in with 20 goals. And so obviously Drogba being either 1A or 1B in that team that won the Premier League, he obviously has that over Fernando Torres. So you could say that Drogba corrected him. But I mean, if Torres probably it's hard to say because I was going to say if Torres played for Chelsea, but he does get his move to Chelsea and then he just falls off a cliff. So
It
so
was.
I think
Did he
it's
have
fair
an
to say
injury
that
or something? Because like it just seemed that at one point, and I think it was like after 08, 09, it was like someone snapped their fingers and it's like
yeah,
you won't be scoring goals. It's almost like there was some kind. He could not buy a goal. It
no,
was
he
it,
couldn't. He
it
was
was just
terrible for
so
Chelsea.
strange. Yeah, like I don't know what it was, but like even for Spain, he couldn't like hit the back of the net really. Yeah, like and then even when he went from Chelsea back to Atletico, couldn't score. I don't know what happened to him, but it seemed like he just lost that instinct or something in front of goal. Like, and I can't remember. Did he get injured? Because sometimes even when players have a serious injury, that plagues on them. So did he have an injury or not? Because I can't remember him necessarily having some kind of injury, like a
From my
serious
memory,
injury.
that 08 09 season, even though Liverpool went on to challenge for the title, I think he was battling with like sort of niggly hamstring injuries for a lot of that season. And obviously, for a player who relied a lot on his pace, maybe that had a big impact on him. But I also think moving, and this sort of gets to another like mini list that I had that we'll touch on before I go in. But moving from Liverpool to Chelsea, where he was so loved at Liverpool and he had the whole crowd behind him, and he must have felt invincible. And then he moved to Chelsea, and obviously Liverpool and Chelsea at that time were, uh, in terms of English football, were probably uh, detested each other nearly the most because they met each other every year in various competitions, the FA Cup, the Champions League, obviously, on top of the two league games that they play every year. So him going into that environment where they were maybe a little bit iffy on him anyway, I just think he needed to be loved around that time. And if he stayed at Liverpool, we might be talking about a different story. But I sort of had a mini list of players who I believe made the wrong moves, and it sort of cut them out of contention for being in these teams. And those players were Di Maria, who moved, I believe, straight after that Champions League success, went to United that next season and just was really nothing. And what you'll find is this list is comprised pretty much solely of players who went to either United or PSG. Because I have Di Maria, I have Pogba. Thiago Silva wasn't really killed for it, but I just would have loved to see him really challenge himself when he was somewhat at his peak by playing in a better league than the French league. Even though the French league is still one of the top five, it's clearly fifth. It's not. it's not above that. Same with Ibrahimovic, even though he was killing it there. Alexis Sanchez going to United, he was so good around that time. Around that time where I was talking about Eduardo Vargas, he was a huge part of that Chile team. Mesut Ozil going to Arsenal, would have been interested to see if he went somewhere else, maybe not the Premier League, and Neymar as well going to PSG. So I don't know if you have any more off the top of your head, and if you don't have anything else to add, I'm happy to hear whichever team you want to start at, whether it be first or third team, and then I'll just follow your lead on that.
See, I want to start with the third team, so like we build maybe the suspense going into the first team. But at the same time, the third team can have so many 50-50s.
Yeah.
Like I think I pretty much only have two 50-50s. One of them is a midfield position and one of them is the forward position. But I think the forward position is pretty much locked down for me. So did you want me to go first or?
Yeah, I think we've heard enough of my voice for the last
All right.
40 minutes.
All right. Well, for the team three, we didn't talk anything about managers, but I'll mention for my team three manager, I got Mourinho, and
Yeah, nice.
I think over the past 20 years, and considering that I'm including 02-03, that includes his Champions League win.
Well, that's his. I believe 02-03 is his UEFA Cup, and then 03-04
yeah,
is his
03-04,
Champions
yeah.
League.
So
And I didn't include either of them, but he still made my shortlist for managers.
yeah, and then it includes his time at Chelsea as well.
Yeah.
And then it includes obviously the Inter treble, and he didn't really achieve much at Real Madrid just because Barca were like just so superior. But I guess he did sort of put the foundations and of that treble winning team together. Because
also, yeah, just before you move off from that point, I think it was the 2012 team that he did break through with and win the league in Spain with Real Madrid. I think they had to get to 100 points.
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible in itself.
And then obviously like when he went to United, I think he won the Europa League with them, and he finished second only behind City. And since then, United haven't finished higher. Tottenham they started off really well, and like that partnership between Kane and Son, I think he sort of that partnership with Kane, yeah, he helped form it or like bring it to another level. Obviously, I think I think there was a story that apparently if he won a trophy with Tottenham, like he'd get an automatic bonus or contract extension or something like that, and that's why he was fired like just before the League Cup final. Yeah. Like it was something behind, like I think it was either financial or contract based, like where he'd get an extension or something like that, or he'd just get a massive bonus for like, and because I think it was like just like any cup that he wins, not like specific like FA Cup or whatever. So that's a pretty funny story. And then last season he wins the inaugural Conference League and
gets the tattoo.
Yeah, and like he seems to be building a pretty decent team at Roma. Yeah. And dude, just before like I get into the team, just because I'm on Roma, did you see Dybala's unveiling?
No, I didn't.
Holy crap, dude!
Do I need to YouTube that one,
dude? It's almost as if like the whole. So like I think it's like Rome's like main square. I swear like 1 million people showed up to it and just like flooded the square, and then Dybala was just like on the. I think there's like these steps or something, or like it's like I think if I'm not mistaken, like someone, I think it's where like in Rome, where like the Caesars would get like it's either where they'd come back and have the celebration and like on those steps or whatever, and he was unveiled on that, and it was just like a spotlight on him, and he was just him alone facing the crowd. And like, yeah, there was like, I swear there was like a million people there, like just like, chanting and crap like that. Like, it looked insane. Like, I imagine his goosebumps would have been like the size of like, like, I don't know, like, I was gonna say donkey balls or something like. Well, yeah, like it's something that you need to YouTube. Anyway, to get back to my team, so I got Mourinho as the manager. Goalkeeper, I got Czech in there. Over the past 20 years, I feel like he's been one of the top 3 goalkeepers. It's a shame that, I think this goes back to a discussion we had like on one of the previous pods, where it's a shame that some players play for certain countries where they'll never win an international tournament. And like Czech, playing for Czech Republic, he's never going to win a Euro. Although there was, I think it was 2004, where Czech Republic had a really good team. They had a really good generational team.
I think they made the semis, and obviously in your list that factors in, but in my list it doesn't factor in.
That didn't factor in for Czech being in there. I just remember like his time at Chelsea. He was an absolute rock, and he was like, for a good portion of his time at Chelsea, he was considered the best goalkeeper in the world. And then obviously he went to Arsenal when he was towards the tail end of his career. So I didn't really consider his time at Arsenal as a reasoning for this list, but just his time at Chelsea, all the achievements that he got there and all the titles that he picked up. I'm betting that there isn't a better goalkeeper. Maybe in 5 years' time, Alisson or Edison can replace him, but I still think even eye test, I think he's better than Edison. Alisson is fantastic in one-on-ones, but I think Czech is a better shot stopper than Alisson. So we'll see in a couple of years' time whether he gets replaced or not, but right now he's making the list over the past 20 years. Now, since I went 20 years, Cafu makes my list as well. As a right back, I can't seem to really name off many better right backs. Yes, now we have Walker and Trent as right backs, but again, like you were saying, some players came either too early or too late, and I just think that they're a little bit too early to be considered in the discussion. But maybe in a couple of years' time, maybe if Walker, for instance, and Trent can't even really make the England team, and that's not necessarily because any fault of his own. I think it's just the system that Southgate employs, where maybe he just can't fit him in. But Walker is a mainstay in that England team, but Man City can't win the Champions League, so there's that. And maybe if England had have either won the World Cup in 2018 or won the Euros last year, maybe Walker would have got into this team 3, perhaps, if he had at least that international tournament to his name. But Cafu, considering I'm including the 2002 World Cup, and I think he got to the final of the Champions League with AC Milan. Was he there for the 2007 one that they won? Or did he retire by then?
I believe he was still there.
Yeah, because
it's got his as an honour.
Yeah, like he was still considered the best right back at the time, and he was still for the 20 years he's still there for a long enough portion, and still earning plaudits and achievements. Whereas comparably, Zidane doesn't make it, even though he was still there for like 4 years of my 20, but he didn't achieve or win enough, whereas Cafu did. And I can't think of any right backs that would be better than him, other than the two that I have in my list. Like Maicon was going to get a shout, but he only really had like 1 or 2 seasons. Whereas Cafu did it for longer than 2 seasons, essentially. With my yeah.
And just before you move off from that, I was going to say, obviously, the World Cup is the crowning achievement, and obviously that gets considered in your list.
And he was the
But
captain.
even that, yeah, and even that 05 Champions League final loss, which was a freak incident. For me, it almost should count as maybe not the title, but they were clearly, for me, the best team in Europe that season, that
Yeah.
AC Milan team. And it was just a freak incident that Liverpool come from 3 goals down and somehow, from some miracle, win that final. So you can almost count that as another, at least being part of the best team in Europe.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I'm glad you brought him up because obviously he didn't make any of my teams.
Yeah, but he still could have made your team if you're going from 04, 05. He still could have made your team.
Could have, but like I said, it was a bit too early.
Yeah, because like I said, you mean too late. Too early as the players.
No, he came along too early with his crowning achievements because I don't have the 02 World Cup. Yeah.
Regardless, we're getting into schematics of definitions, but like I said, I struggle to recall any better right backs over the past 20 years that have done it for longer or have more achievements. In my centre back partnership is PK and Vidic. PK obviously obviously his time at Barcelona, and I think he was at United. I think he technically did get a winner's medal for that 08 Champions League because I think he was part of the squad. So technically he has that, even though he wasn't part of he wasn't a main centre back.
09.
Was it 09 or 08?
Yeah, and he was the main centre back by then. I think.
No, for United.
For United. Oh, for United. Sorry.
I think he did. He was part of the United squad, so he technically has that. Even though it's that argument where, like, if you look at the Bulls double three-peat players that were on the bench, they have 6. Some of those players that were there for both three-peats, they have 6 rings, but they saw like 5 minutes a game.
You know so who's the most interesting one out of that? It's Robert Parrish for me because he won all those rings with the Celtics in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then somehow he was still playing in the late 90s and gets a ring for being part of those teams.
Well, yeah, like there you go, like that. So like I don't count that Champions League win to his name, but he won the champion. He was already part of that 08-09 squad for Barca when they won that first one with Pep. He was already like part of that. He was already like one of the main centre backs, or like getting into being that one of those main centre backs because it was Puyol and Marquez from memory, who were the 2 main ones, and then PK.
I remember Yaya Toure had to play centre back for that 09 final.
Yeah, but that's only because of like suspensions and injuries. I think it was more suspensions than injuries. And then obviously like his time at Spain, with Spain like winning a World Cup. I'm not sure he was part of the squad for the 08 Euros, but he obviously has the 2012 Euros to his name, and then he has like 3 Champions Leagues with Barca, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 with Pep and then 1 with Luis Enrique. So it goes without saying. Vidic, I'm struggling to, like, I know you named off Thiago Silva was going to be in there, but I just feel like his move to PSG crippled his, not crippled his career, but just like maybe, I'm trying to like think of the right word, but like it had, like what you said, had he have moved from AC Milan where he was like winning the league, and I think that at that time they were still going relatively deep in the Champions League. Had he ever moved from AC Milan to either Spain or England, like to a Real or a Barca or a United or a Chelsea, back then in the prime of his career, I think he would maybe even make the second and like did what, got all the achievements. He probably would have made the second team, maybe even the first team. Who knows? Who knows? But like Thiago Silva, it diminishes a lot of what he did just because he went to PSG, and he only won the Champions League last 2 years ago, or last year actually, when he was like 36, 37. And even then in the final, he got subbed off after 15 or 20 minutes because of injury. So he wasn't yes, he was part of the team for the run into the
that
final.
one counts. That one counts because he was a big part of the run-in.
Yeah, I know. Like I'm not taking it away from him, but but I'm just saying would a 28-year-old Thiago Silva in that same position have come off? Like who knows? Injuries can strike at any. Like they can strike when you're 20 or when you're 40 or whatever. But Vidic makes it just because at that time, I think he during that United three-peat, he was considered the best centre back in the world. He was considered better than Ferdinand. I'm pretty sure. It's just that I think Ferdinand did it for longer.
Okay, that's good because you already answered one of my questions, which was Vidic obviously against Thiago Silva, and you believe that Vidic should be there. And to your point, he did make the FIFA Pro World 11 in 09 and 11. And the other question I had, and you sort of answered it just then, was does his centre-back partner at United have a case to be in this team if Vidic is in there? And obviously you've gone for Vidic. But some people might go, and I might be one of them, might go for his centre-back partner.
Well, who's to say I don't have Ferdinand in one of my other teams?
Not true.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
I think just because Vidic has a higher peak than Ferdinand, but he doesn't have that longevity of Ferdinand. So that's why he's in my team 3 and not my team 2. Because I would have loved to have put some of those AC Milan centre backs in, like a Maldini or a Nesta, but that was sort of towards the end of, or even a Cannavaro. But Cannavaro only has the World Cup to his name, and maybe I think a La Liga, and that's it. During that time, he might have had a Serie A as well.
He got stripped.
Yeah, so
you can count it obviously because they played the whole season and they won. But
But yeah, I think Vidic, he was an absolute beast back then, and now a lot of people are making comparisons between Vidic and Van Dijk, and the numbers
they're different for me.
But the numbers that Vidic has put up, from what I've seen of at least what people are posting online, Vidic has better numbers than Van Dijk. So, but then again, you can't compare numbers because systems are different, centre-back partnerships are different, everything's different as well. So, yeah. And then for my left-back for Team 3, I got Marcelo. I could have put Roberto Carlos in there, but I think it was just more towards the end, and I don't think he did more. He did less than Cafu did towards the end of his career, because I think Cafu and Carlos finished around the same time in the mid 2000s. But he just didn't do enough other than the World Cup, really, and a La Liga. But Marcelo, on the other hand, he got to the semi-finals with Brazil in 2014. He has some of these Copa Americas. He has some of those to his name. I don't know how many, but I'm sure he's won one or two. And then
I don't. Oh, in my time frame, he doesn't. He doesn't have one.
Huh.
Brazil didn't win one from 07 to 2021.
Really?
2019.
They didn't win one at all.
Did not win one in that time frame.
Huh. Well, that's shocking. But I take that back. But at the same point, he has. I know he wasn't necessarily part of the starting 11 of this last Champions League win, But was he the club captain though? So
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
still, and I think that still goes like being the club captain and like not necessarily playing, sort of like a Mark Noble as well. It's he keeps that team together, keeps the winning mentality going, and he's still a very integral part to things behind the scenes and keeping everyone from getting complacent and all that stuff. So even though he might
well,
not have put the minutes in on the pitch, he put the
yeah.
minutes in behind closed doors. And then
Just
obviously he still
before
has
you,
for the 4 Champions Leagues before this one, where he
yeah,
was the
yeah,
main
of
guy.
course. Just before you move off that point, I'm not disagreeing that he's a good influence behind the scenes. I'm not disagreeing with that. But Real Madrid obviously do the Real Madrid thing where the longest serving player is the captain. So him being the captain doesn't maybe necessarily tell the story that he is the most influential player, but I'm not doubting that he is no doubt an influence. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that.
Yeah, like it's just at the end of the day speculation as to what kind of influence he is, because but I imagine because he is captain, he still does have a very big influence. And but then they probably obviously have the leadership team, which would consist of like Modric, Benzema, and Cruz, and maybe
No doubt.
so. And then I don't know who else would be in that leadership team because like those are the longest serving members. But yeah, like I struggled to really, other than the two left backs that made my first and second team, I struggled to really think of a more impactful or a better left back than Marcelo. Like Jordi Alba could be one, but Marcelo, I feel did more because I don't. Jordi Alba doesn't have a World Cup to his name. I think he only has that Euro 2012. And then he has one Champions League to his name. So
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. So and I'm just trying to think like, and like no left backs really come like had like just
Well,
going off memory like without me going into research and deep diving who played left back for certain teams at certain times. Like there's certain left backs that just come to your mind straight away. And Marcelo is one of those ones, not necessarily because he's the most recent, but I can't really think of left backs that played for like Arsenal in the mid 2000s. I know Ashley Cole was like Arsenal and Chelsea, but and then I can't really think of, and then like I know Eric Abidal for Barcelona, but he wasn't really. I don't think he had that much of an impact as what Marcelo has had.
I absolutely can't wait for your second and first team left backs after Marcelo made third team.
I'm curious to see who
But
yours are because, like, with some positions, I'm like, because I know you obviously went into your deep dives and stuff like that, and you made a short list. I didn't go that far. I went more based off of a little bit of research, memory, and like eye test from memory as well. And then I obviously included like longevity, accomplishments, and all that stuff as well. But like, I just can't seem to think of that many like left backs, to be honest. Similar with right backs as well. Hasn't been really that many impactful ones. Alphonso Davies could get a mention, but he was injured last season, I think, for like the entirety of the season.
Hasn't done enough yet.
Yeah, he only has like one season really where he like was an absolute beast. So yeah. Now with I got a midfield 4, and then I have a player playing just behind the striker. So that I got like pretty much a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1 formation.
Yeah.
I got Bale as a right mid just because and I know that his time at Tottenham and even Real, he played on the left, but I have another Welsh left mid. And I think Bale can play on the right because he has a.
Geez, I wonder who you're talking about. Welsh left midfielders.
Yeah, there's only really one, is there? But like Bale, I'm like, because I went for a 4-4-2 rather than a 4-3-3, which everyone sort of goes for. I needed someone for that right midfield spot, and he can go up and down that line. But like, he can cut in while Cafu, like bombards up the line as well. Oh, and that's another thing. I wanted the teams to be somewhat functional as well. So like, and be able to actually go out onto the pitch and play. So, for instance, you wouldn't have like a midfield three of like Rubinho, David Silva, and Kaka, because there's no one covering. Did I say Rubinho or Ronaldinho?
Either one.
Regardless.
I get your point. You definitely need a holding mid.
Yeah, you need a holding mid, if not two. So, depending on... But yeah, like, I want it to be somewhat functional as well. So, yeah, I got Bale in there because at his time at Tottenham, he would sometimes pop up on the right and come in and cut onto his left foot and take shots. And, like, that's part of some of his highlight reel. At Real Madrid, he played mostly on the left. I can't really remember him playing on the right too much, but he can still occupy that spot on the right because he has shown that at Tottenham. And I know that he fell out of favour at Real Madrid, but he was like an integral part of that first three-peat. And even in that very first, I think he was there for that very first one, Champions League as well. And I guess those 5 Champions Leagues that Real had won are going to be a big part of our teams and like those players. Definitely. As well as that Barca Spain combination from 08 to 2012, maybe even 2014 if you want to include, because like some of those players won the Champions League in 2014 as well, or was it 2014, 2015? But yeah, like that. So Bale as well for his accomplishments, and just because like he was considered at a point in time, and like for like a couple of points in time, was like the best right. You'd say left mid, left wing.
No, right wing's fine because I think my memory of him at Real Madrid is actually as a right winger because obviously Ronaldo's usually coming from the left.
I know against Liverpool he scored when he was on the right.
Yeah, cutting in.
Yeah, he cut in and took that shot that Karius fluffed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like, he can definitely occupy the spot. Now, with my 2 midfield spots, I have, like, 50-50s. And if I mention one of the names, you'll know who the other name is. So, one of my midfield spots, the 50-50 is Lampard. So, who's the other one?
Goals. That's Gerrard, obviously.
Yeah. For these 2 guys, they are incredibly similar. They're like, would you go as far, like, I wouldn't go as far as saying carbon copies, but like they are just so similar, and like, but then like there's those slight differences between them that obviously differentiate them. But I think, like, for instance, like 90% of their game is very similar.
It depends what position Gerrard's playing in. For me, Steven Gerrard showed that he can do more than Frank Lampard, but if you prefer the stats and the accomplishments, then you go for Frank Lampard pretty much every day.
Yeah, and then the other thing...
It's a toss-up, and I wouldn't begrudge you going for Frank Lampard, but for me, it's Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, but then the other...
But obviously, I got a bias.
The other thing is, though, that Gerrard, that does play into Gerrard's hands, is that he played for worse teams than what Lampard played for. So I think even if you take Gerrard's best teams and put them up against Lampard's best teams, I think more than 50% of the time Lampard comes out on top. Because I think, and it's not like those Chelsea teams were far superior than Liverpool's best teams, like that 08 or 09 and the, was it 13-14 with Suarez?
13-14.
So like,
but
they weren't massively better, but
it goes into the thing that I was saying about Gerrard has shown. And like, I don't know, because Lampard was never asked to do this, but Gerrard was asked to play as a deep lying playmaker.
And
then nearly won the league. And then he was asked to do the Lampard role in that 07, 08, 08, 09 range, just
Yeah.
behind Fernando Torres. And he was very good at that. And then he's asked to play as a box-to-box midfielder before that. So for me, that's why Gerrard gets the nod. But like I said, if you want the Premier League titles, being part of a fantastic Premier League team in that early Mourinho Chelsea, and then being a main part in that Ancelotti Chelsea team as well. And then if you want the goals, and then if you want the league titles, the accolades, then you go Frank Lampard. But if you want maybe the versatility, you go Steven Gerrard. The only thing Gerrard has over Lampard is he's made three, I think, FIFA Pro World 11s, and I don't think Frank Lampard. Well, from 04, 05 on, he hasn't made one.
Yeah.
So
Look, for me
yeah,
personally, growing up, I always preferred Lampard over Gerrard, and I just thought that he was, like, even saying he was more impactful is wrong. But like, I just feel that I don't want, and even saying I feel like he offered more is wrong, because like Gerrard like came up with many more winning moments, but I think, yeah, and like Lampard would obviously play for the better team, but I still always preferred Lampard, like growing up. So that, I guess that comes down to eye test. But then for a lot of people, eye test, like for instance, you might say eye test, Gerrard was a better footballer technically as well. So I don't know. I'm personally going for Lampard. So I just scrubbed Gerrard from the list, but I guess he would. And again, like it's good that we had that debate, and I guess we could even put Scholes in there too. Scholes, like, it's always that Lampard, Gerrard, Scholes argument, but personally, I'm going for Lampard. The other one is
I'm gonna and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I've got to give a hot take.
yeah,
I personally look. I wouldn't go as far as saying Scholes isn't on the level of those two guys. But personally, for two reasons. One, I don't think Scholes was as good as these two guys, because I think goal scoring midfielders are more valuable than the other type of midfielder. If Scholes could defend better, then I think he'd be a good discussion. But I don't think he's the same type of midfielder as these two. And also, I just think what Lampard and Gerrard did was more valuable than Paul Scholes. But I wouldn't say not on the level, but I don't think he should be in the discussions. I think it's Lampard versus Gerrard. Scholes is great in his own right. But for me, I'm taking Lampard and Gerrard over Scholes pretty much any day, unless your team needs that midfielder who can dictate the tempo. But I guess Gerrard couldn't really do that. He was a bit more action back, but he did somewhat do it in 13-14. So
see,
it's a little bit controversial. I'm not saying he's not on the level, but for me, it's definitely Gerrard, Lampard, then Scholes.
yeah. See, I never considered Scholes as part of the Lampard Gerrard discussion, because I always felt he was a different type of player.
Yeah.
Scholes was more of would be more comparable to someone like Xavi, for instance, or Xabi.
Well, Xavi's even said it himself. He got a lot. He loved watching Paul Scholes. He got a lot. And also, a lot of Paul Scholes' accomplishments and a lot of his great play came, for me, pre-04-05. So that's why I think I put him on the too early list.
But he was still there, like, till late on.
Yeah, I know. The other one, the Xabi Alonso one, for me, Xabi Alonso is better than Paul Scholes, because I think Xabi Alonso is a better defender. And more of a coach on the field than Paul Scholes. Paul Scholes seemed quite quiet. Maybe he was more of a coach, I don't know, but he never appeared that way to me. So for me, I still have Xabi Alonso. But that Xavi comparison, I think, is the perfect one.
And then my other midfield to partner up with Lampard, it's either Pirlo or Xabi. So sort of to sit alongside or just behind and let Lampard go up and down. So it's either Pirlo or Xabi. I know Xabi has more international accomplishments.
Do you want to, because I'm going to talk about both of those players later. So do you want to make a decision now, or do you want to wait until we talk about them a bit later and then make a decision?
See, here's the thing. Pirlo has more club accomplishments than Xabi. Like he has more league titles. I think he has more Champions Leagues as well, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe one more than Xabi, because Xabi only won one at Liverpool, didn't he?
Well, because you're taking into account from '02, then they have the same amount of Champions League titles. They have
Yeah.
two. I know Alonso didn't
Wait,
play in the 14
Xabi only
final,
has
but
one, doesn't he?
no, Xabi Alonso has two. He has the Liverpool '05 and he
Yeah.
has Real Madrid 14, but he didn't play in the final in 14, but he was a huge part in the team that got there.
Oh, he moved to Bayern after.
He moved to Bayern after that Champions League, yeah.
Huh. Okay. I thought he moved before. I thought he just missed out on it, similar to Özil. Okay. So they both have two, pretty much. But yeah, like they're very similar types of players. Like they're very comparable. I think Xabi's a harder worker and better defensively. So, and because I think he'd be a better partner to Lampard. So I'm going Xabi. And then I've already revealed my left mid, the one and only Ryan Giggs. I struggled because I think it's more because I went for this formation. I sort of struggled to find like a better left mid that can also roam forward or even come inside, because Marcelo can overlap. But just going off of like his achievements, he played till he was like what, 40 pretty much, and like how many in that time from '02, how many Premier Leagues did he win? Like he won like what, like 6 or 7, and then he also won one Champions League as well. Got to the final another 2 times, but lost. I think he was part of the team when they lost to Barca the second time in 2011.
Yeah.
So what he did for United, it goes without saying that I think he was pretty much the best in that position. And like I said, I struggled to sort of think of other players that could take his place. Like, I'm not sure if you can sort of mention any or not that can trigger my memory.
I will. Look, I didn't go 4-4-2 in any of my teams, so maybe not. He's probably ideal for this 4-4-2 system on that left.
Yeah.
In my time frame, the best accomplishment I could give to Ryan Giggs was obviously part of that three-peat for Man United at that time, where the Premier League was really strong, and also won the PFA Players Player of the Year in '09, which is a pretty great accomplishment given his age at the time. I think it was mid to late 30s. You'd have to look that one up, but I also thought it was a little bit of a robbery of Steven Gerrard. But Steven Gerrard won the Football Writers Award, so
yeah. But
all's fair.
Even so, like Giggs was like always in that starting 11, even till his last season as well. Like, you know how players generally, they sort of get phased out and they're playing like, instead of playing like 50 games, they play 45, 40, 30, and so on. Like, he was always playing. It seemed like he was playing almost week in, week out.
The thing that Ferguson did to help him was
he moved him into
gave
midfield.
him. Yeah, exactly. He gave him the John Barnes treatment and moved him into attacking mid.
And I guess
that's where he won that Players Player of the Year award from.
Yeah, and I guess like for this formation, because I had to have Marcelo who can overlap, and also Cafu who can overlap on the other side, which allows Bale and Giggs to come inside to open up that space for them. So
yeah, it definitely works.
I think it really works. And in front of that midfield 4, I have Kaká, and for me, I know he only had from '05, '06, or like '04, '05, until maybe just before he came to Real. So he had like a good 5-6 season stretch where he was like pretty much the best or one of the best players in the world. Not just in his position, but best player in the world, and even won a Ballon d'Or as well. When you had other players like a Ronaldinho around, and like Lampard, Gerrard, who were like on top of their game in the mid 2000s. Henri as well. Henri didn't win a Ballon d'Or either. And what he was doing in those, yeah,
the last non-Messi Ronaldo Ballon d'Or until Luka Modric won it in 18.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and like he was the main guy of that Ancelotti AC Milan as well. And
definitely.
It's a shame that injuries sort of curtailed his career, because he was a fantastic player. Like I loved watching him play. So a lot of this is eye test as well. But
it's the Brazil thing.
But he wasn't. Well. But he wasn't. Yeah, but the thing is, his wasn't necessarily that he would go out partying or anything like that. Like,
hey, I didn't. Hey, you said that. I didn't say that. Well, I just said the Brazil thing. It just seems to happen to Brazilian players. I'm not saying he partied.
Well,
I'm not saying these Brazilians go out and party.
That's generally the the association. But Kaká.
Put words in my mouth.
Kaká seemed like one of the, I guess, well-behaved Brazilians where he wouldn't go out and drink and party. And like, I think there was even a quote I read the other day of Ronaldinho where he was like, if you wanted me to play till I was 40, you guys should have banned nightclubs and alcohol. He's like, I'm not going to waste my young years or my prime years not partying and being with women and stuff. And do it when I'm 40 or 50 years old after.
That's why we love Ronaldinho.
Yeah, and Kaká seemed like one of the well-behaved ones, but I think his was just those sort of natural. At Real, I think he had a couple of niggling or crappy little injuries that just it was 1 week in, 1 week out, and just couldn't get that consistency. Whereas it would have been pretty good to see what he could have done at Real Madrid as well, because it felt like he moved there still during his prime. But yeah, unfortunate to see what happened. But when he was on top for at least 4 or 5 years, and probably only second to second or third to Ronaldinho or Henri around that mid 2000s time. So I got him.
And
yeah.
And finally, before we move off Kaká, I know I've said this on a pod before, but still one of the greatest goals I've ever seen is that third goal in the Champions League final of 2005, where he makes Gerrard look like an absolute fool in the midfield, turns him silly, and then plays this 40-yard pass along the ground, curling in behind Carragher, who thinks he can get to it, but he can't. And then Crespo applies this ridiculous outside of the foot finish. Still one of the nicest goals I've ever seen in that moment as well.
And also that United performance as well in the 06-07
run. The header between Heinze and Evra. Yeah. And he makes them both look like idiots as well.
Yeah, and he was the pretty much what led them to the final as well. Definitely. I wouldn't say it was a Benzema sort of led performance or inspired performance, but he was, because the thing is he had a great, I think he had better players around him than what Benzema has, just because Benzema's players around him, some of them are aging, but yeah, he was the leader of that team though, at least from a performance perspective. So he was the main guy that they would rely on to win games or find the moments. So I got him playing just behind the striker, and there was so many strikers that I could have put up front. Lewandowski I initially had penciled in just because of what he's been scoring 40, 50 goals per season for the past 3, 4, 5 seasons. But I've gone for David Villa just because growing up I absolutely loved him. I loved the way he would be able to finish and play with the team as well. He was almost like a finisher and playmaker, especially when he played in that front three at Valencia with David Silva and Juan Mata as well. So it was Juan Mata, David Silva, and David Villa, and they were a joy to watch. And then he got his move to Barcelona, where he won a Champions League. Unfortunately, got injured. But Spain's all-time leading goal scorer as well, ahead of Fernando Torres, and Raul and Fernando Morientes. So I think it goes to show like how good of a striker he was, considering of his accomplishments. And I know I could have put like Drogba in there, Samuel Eto'o, and like and other strikers as well. But and Aguero as well, I could have put him. But I just feel like David Villa complements that team a lot better. And originally I was going to go for Lewandowski because Kaká always played with like he played with like an Inzaghi or someone who would play with him, and like I felt like Lewandowski could play with Kaká very well. But then I remember David Villa, who I think he can combine with Kaká even better. So I've gone with David Villa.
Yeah, no qualms there. Theo was he was in serious contention for my third team as well, which I don't know if I've completely decided, and that's why we're going to have this discussion.
Yeah, and I
But
remember my first memory of video was, I think it was like they show, remember on SBS they used to show like highlights of like the best goals of the week. I think it was from like
yeah,
it was like either a Euro, I think it was a Euros qualifier for '08, and I think he smashed in. I think it might have been against. For some reason, I'm thinking blue shirts. Something in Italy. It might have been against Italy in a qualifier, or maybe it wasn't Italy. Maybe it was someone else. But like, he smashed in this first time volley on the edge of I think on the left hand side of the edge of the box into the top corner. And like, that was my very first memory, or like seeing David Villa, and I was like, I need to go see more of this player. And like, I went and like went and researched him and everything, and saw more highlights. I was like, this guy's amazing. And yeah, he ended up winning Euros and a World Cup, and it would have been another Euros if he didn't have, I think it was a knee injury or something that he suffered at Barca after that Champions League win. So,
yeah, and then you also forget that he was a part of that Atletico team, the one in 13-14,
yeah,
won the
yeah, and
league.
that gets overlooked as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's a great player.
but yeah, that's my team with manager. They obviously, because it's a third team, there could be players that could get in there over other players, but I think that's a very solid team, and it's not necessarily hard to find arguments for better players, but I think it's hard to not find arguments for the players that made it in.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up a lot of those players: Czech, Cafu, PK, Vidic, Giggs, and probably Villa, and probably Kaká as well, because we could have a discussion about them, because those players, as it stands, haven't. Well, Cafu didn't make it just because a lot of his accomplishments were too early, but the other ones haven't made it into my team or haven't solidified spots in any one of my three teams. So in my third team, as it stands, cemented spots.
Who's your manager, first of all? Or are you going for
My
manager last?
manager. Okay, my manager's shortlist is Ancelotti, Guardiola, Klopp, Allegri, Simeone, Mourinho, Ferguson, Conte, and then
Oh yeah,
honourable
Fergie.
mentions
How
to.
did I forget Fergie?
Yeah,
Shit.
yeah. I was gonna say it's really hard to pick managers. I'm pretty sure I know who my first team manager is, but beyond that, I could go with a lot of these options. And honourable mentions to Heinkes, Enrique, and Flick, but they were a bit of one-season wonders. But all of them, I believe, won. Oh, I don't think Flick won the treble, but the other two won trebles as well, which is pretty special. So
I think Flick did win the treble.
he did. He
I
won the
th-
domestic cup as
I
well.
think he might have.
We'll
I'd
have
be
to
very
research that
surprised if
one.
he didn't, because like the German league's obviously very weak. So yeah.
I think my third team manager will be Jurgen Klopp, because you already gave us the Mourinho argument, and I don't fault you for putting him in. Ferguson could also be the third team manager. I would accept any one of those three for third team manager, but I'll go Jurgen Klopp just because winning 2 league titles at Dortmund is no mean feat with the monster that is Bayern around. And still, they remain the last league titles not won by Bayern in Germany. Also, taking that team to the Champions League final is some accomplishment, although they lost to obviously that team Bayern. And then what he's done at Liverpool, which I guess we don't really need to talk about that much more because we've all seen it in recent years. So, and I think what makes him special is that he pretty much builds what he does, and then he builds it to a point where they can actually contend for the biggest prizes. So, for that reason, I'll put Klopp as the third team manager. Now, there'll be some discussions with my third team, and we'll try and make them as quick as possible. I have the honours ready to go, the resumes of the players, but my third team goalkeeper came down to 2 candidates, and those candidates are Buffon or Courtois. Buffon, 8 Serie A titles, 12 through to 18, and then the 2020 in 2020, he had one season at PSG where they obviously won the Liga title, Champions League runner-up in 15 and 17, obviously the World Cup in 2006. That goes along with the Golden Glove of that tournament. Euro runner-up in 2012, and FIFA Pro World 11, 06, 07, and then again in 17, 10 years after his last appearance in that team. Obviously, the longevity's with him. Syria was somewhat a little bit weak when Juve are winning all them, but they're still winning them all. So how much of a gripe can you have? Um, no Champions Leagues, which is the killer, and which is why Courtois even made the argument because of what he did last season in breaking through and winning that Champions League. So for Courtois, he has the Atletico La Liga title in 14 and also the Champions League runner-up that season. Goes over to Chelsea, wins the Premier League straight away there, and then wins it again in 17. And then wins La Liga in 2020 and 2022 for Real Madrid. Caps it off with the cherry on top, which is the last season's Champions League title and the man and match performance in that game. For Belgium, third place in the World Cup in 2018, and that went along with the Golden Glove of that tournament. As it stands, no FIFA Pro World 11s, but what I like about Courtois is the transference of his greatness or the transference of his winning because he's won at Atletico, he's won at Chelsea, now he's won at Real Madrid. League titles at all three of those destinations, a Champions League title and a Champions League runner-up. So it puts him in the argument. I don't know if you have strong opinions. If you can give us your quick take on who you think should be that third team goalkeeper out of those two choices that I had.
Buffon.
Why though?
I just think he's a better goalkeeper, and he's been doing it for much. He's pretty much been doing it for the last of the 18-year span. He's been winning almost every single year. Like he's been winning something. Like he's been winning the league title or a World Cup or whatever. Like he obviously has the Euro runner-up in 2012 as well. But yeah, like Buffon, hands down better. Courtois maybe has an argument in a couple of years' time, but Buffon is better, and also eye test he's better.
I don't know. You saw what Courtois could do in the World Cup final, but I do love Buffon, and I'll agree with that. I can go with Buffon as the third team goalkeeper. Courtois, I guess, has time to add to his resume, but I do love the fact that he's won league titles at 3 different clubs now and has a Champions League, something that Buffon doesn't have to his name. But we'll go with Buffon as my third team goalkeeper. Right back, I have a toss up. Well, it was a toss up between Javier Zanetti and Branislav Ivanovic, but then because those two, in the time frame that I'm looking at them, don't have weak cases. We're talking about the third team of the best players of the last 18 years, but not the strongest cases. I added Kimmich and Trent to that list as well. So I have 4 players for that one spot there. Zanetti, Serie A champion 5 times from '06 to 2010. Obviously, Juve had to get knocked off their match fixing scandal, so that made it somewhat easier to win those titles, but still had to win them. And that was also at a time where AC Milan were one of the best teams in Europe, and they couldn't break through for a league title in that span. So that's no mean feat in itself. Undoubtedly, one of the leaders of that team, if not the main leader of that team. And the versatility, as we see with Kimmich as well, out of these guys to either play right back or, as he did in that 2010 treble winning season, play holding midfielder as one of two pivots. Obviously, I mentioned that he won the Champions League in 2010 for Inter. Ivanovic was a key part of the 2010 Ancelotti winning Premier League side. And the 2015 side, where I thought is in terms of peaks, and I didn't put him on the peak list because he was good for a few seasons, but in terms of peak, that 2015, I loved what Ivanovic did at right back. He was like a centre back, but Chelsea would so often use him as an outball from defensive set pieces, which I thought was fantastic. And also, they would overload onto the left hand side where Eden Hazard was playing, and it would leave so much space for Ivanovic to come and attack, which I thought he was fantastic at. Big part of that UCL winning team for Chelsea in 2012. And then just a tidy little cherry on top, winning the Europa League the next season. Uh, Joshua Kimmich, 7 times league champion from 16 to 22, and a UCL title in there in 2020, which also earned him a FIFA Pro World 11 in 2020. And then finally, Trent, EPL winning side in 2020, but also had a great campaign before that in 18-19, where they finished on 97 points. And then obviously last season, another great campaign, UCL winner in 2019 and a FIFA Pro World 11 in 2020. So my inclination is to go because Kimmich and Trent, and because Kimmich's changed position, it's a bit harder to put him in. Because Trent has so long left, I'm more inclined to give this spot to. I'm gonna say Javier Zanetti, and it's a tough one between him and Ivanovic. But again, I'd like any thoughts you have on that debate between those players.
See, Ivanovic was a very, I know I didn't mention him, but he was a very good shout for my third team because like he came to mind and he was like a mainstay of that Chelsea team for like, what, like 10 years or so when they were winning titles and Champions Leagues and he was like a bit of a beast, right? Like not in the sense that like he would be bombarding up and down the line right back like that traditional sort of Brazilian like Cafu, Maicon, Alves type, but he was almost like I think you mentioned like a third centre back type of right back, sort of like what Walker is transitioning into now, and yeah, I didn't watch enough of Zanetti to comment, so I need to leave this one up to you. But I will say that yeah, Ivanovic was a shout for my third team.
Yeah, and a fair shout for sure. That 2015 season, he was unbelievable. But I will just go with Zanetti just for more league titles and a treble winning. And the versatility. I like the versatility of him being able to sort of play in that holding midfielder, even though I love how Ivanovic, in that day and age where, like you say, we're talking about Mycons, we're talking about Danny Alves's, where he was more of that traditional right back, but he could get forward as well when they left him the space, and he did it to devastating effect. So I don't begrudge anyone thinking that Ivanovic should be in there over Zanetti, but I'll go with Zanetti. Now, the other argument we alluded to was, so it's a three-pronged argument because and it's for both the centre back positions. The first argument is two players on the same team in both cases, which is Ferdinand v Vidic. I have Ferdinand narrowly, and Ferdinand, like Vidic, 5 times EPL winner, UCL winner in '08, runner up in '09 and 11, and a FIFA Pro World 11 in '08 for for Ferdinand, and Vidic made it FIFA Pro World 11 in '09 and 11. The argument I'll accept for Vidic over Ferdinand is that Ferdinand was already at United and Vidic came in, and they were instantly back to back to back Premier League title winners. But my argument for Ferdinand over Vidic is mainly based on the eye test, where obviously Vidic is a great defender, but I just think Ferdinand, much sort of in the way that Virgil van Dijk does today, made defending sometimes look quite easy. I thought he was better on the ball as well. He was more of the Rolls Royce type defender rather than the nitty gritty. I'd say the John Terry type that Vidic sort of was. So for that reason, I just have him edging. But again, it's when I have debates like this, it's a toss up. If someone said they prefer Vidic over Ferdinand, I wouldn't question that. I guess we sort of already touched that on your team. Now, the second debate, and then the second part of that debate, which we also touched on, was those two, whoever you take out of those two, versus Thiago Silva. Now, Thiago Silva won Serie A in 2011 with AC, then went, and like you say, this is the bit that kills me. Goes to PSG, wins 7 league titles, fine. Champions League runner-up in 2020. Okay, cool. And then finally breaks through to win that Champions League in 2021 for Chelsea. Like you say, came off early, but was a mainstay in that team. Was part of the Brazil team that won Copa America in 2019. So that's the thing he has over the other two candidates, and also has 3 FIFA Pro World 11s in 2013, 2014, and 2015. But I don't know. I'm not sure he should be in the FIFA Pro World 11 in those years playing for PSG. I Look, I don't want to crap all over the French league because it is still the fifth best league in the world, but it is exactly that. It's the fifth best league in the world. It's not. You can't put it above Germany. You can't put it above Spain or Italy or the Premier League. You just can't do it. It's not. It's not a better quality than those leagues. So ultimately, my decision was for Ferdinand. But like I say, if you have any one of those three, if you take any one of those three, I'm fine with that. So the second centre back position, the argument I had, again, two players at the same team, Chiellini versus Bonucci. Now, Bonucci has more acclaim in terms of, obviously, they've all won the same things. So 9 times Serie A winners from 2012 to 2020, and then 2 UCL runner-ups in 15 and 17, and then Euro 2020 or 2021, whatever you want to call it. They won the latest edition of the Euros for Italy. Bonucci also was part of the squad that finished runner-up in 2012, and also has 2 FIFA Pro World 11s in 2017 to 2021, whereas Chiellini doesn't have the 2012 runner-up or the FIFA Pro being in the teams of the year, the World 11s. But for me, my eye test, I would take Chiellini. Maybe it's something about a left-footed centre back. And I know I said this about the Ferdinand v Vidic argument, but I didn't think there was much between them as defenders in terms of Ferdinand v Vidic. Whereas Chiellini v Bonucci, I think as defenders, I think Chiellini is. I don't want to say clearly because that sort of says that Bonucci's not a great defender, but for me, he is a better defender. The way he defends, I just think he's better. I think he's got a better physique to defend. And I just love the fact that he can balance your team with that left foot and being that left footed centre back. And then the third part of that argument, and they sort of go into this argument because they haven't won a Champions League, none of these three players, but I have Diego Godin. So whoever you take out of Chiellini versus Bonucci, and then you pin him up against Godin, who was probably, for me, apart from Simeone, the major part of why Atletico are now one of the best clubs in Europe, because before that, you wouldn't consider Atletico Madrid one of the best clubs in Europe. Maybe they're falling off a bit in recent seasons, but in that mid 2010s, they were undoubtedly one of the best clubs in Europe. Obviously, he comes in, I think, around 2010. They win La Liga in 2014. Uh, UCL runner up in 14 and 16, much like Bonucci and Chiellini in 15 and 17. Wins the Europa League in 2012 and 2018, I believe, for Inter. I, I'd have to fact check that one. I can't remember if they won it or they were runners up, but either way, he's won one with Atletico, and then for Uruguay wins the Copa America in 2011, much like Bonucci and Chiellini winning the Euro 2020. So for me, it's a toss up between those three. I think I'd give the nod to Chiellini. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that argument between those three.
Um, yeah, the Chiellini Bonucci one. I think just because like they've been centre back partnerships for those two have been like together for so long. Like those two are sort of like synonymous, so it's hard to pick between them, I suppose. I'm not sure I'd chuck Godin in there. I'd pick between Bonucci or Chiellini, to be honest. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fair.
don't forget that they were main. They were like, I guess it was a team. It was like that Italy performance at the Euros was very well rounded. So like it wasn't just like one or two players that really stood out. But yeah, they've been mainstays of that Italy team for like quite a while, and they were a big part of why they won the Euro as well, which I personally rate as a higher standard of tournament than the Copa America.
It is from start to finish, but once you get to the pointy end of the Copa America, I think the South American teams, once you get to probably the last four, I mean, they're high quality teams, and obviously we have a lot of South American players who will make these teams. So I don't want to be too snobby and say the Euros are clearly better. There's obviously more teams in Europe, but the quality in South America is arguably just as good as Europe, just in a more condensed fashion. So maybe the start of that tournament's a bit easier, but once you get to the pointy end, I see it as much of a muchness between that and the Euros. I guess you could give Chiellini or Bonucci the nod for 9 Serie A titles, but the only thing I'll say is that La Liga title for Godin has to rate as like worth probably 3, because you have to beat Real Madrid at a time where they're winning um, the Champions League that season, and you have to beat Barcelona one season before they win the Champions League. Both Barcelona have Messi and Real Madrid have Ronaldo, and he's a major part, if not the main part, in the playing personnel of why they won that 13-14 title. So I give it massive props for that, and that's why he's in that discussion. But again, I'll probably give the nod just to Chiellini. Um, and finally, I did have Jordi Alba in my second team initially, but upon doing the research, I had to bump him down to third and put who I had in the third team in the second team. And we'll get to that soon. But so I have Jordi Alba at a smidge over Eric Abidal. Um, Obviously, Jordi Alba, five times La Liga champion, part of that fantastic Barcelona team in 2015 that won the Champions League, and then part of that Spain Euros team in 2012. Wasn't around for the '08 or 2010 triumphs, but came into his own at that 2012 tournament. The only other one I had in contention was Eric Abidal, who won league titles at Lyon, 3 of them before going to Barca and winning 4 La Liga titles, and a French World Cup runner-up, as well as the 2 Champions Leagues in '09 and 2011 at Barca. So again, if you said Abidal over Alba, I wouldn't complain, but I just think for the eye test, I think Jordi Alba's a little bit of an underrated defender, and then we all know what he can do going forward. So I just have Jordi Alba at a smidge over Eric Abidal. Um, Holding midfielder, again, I've already touched on this. I left Busquets out of all three. He was in for a shout, and if you put him in this position, I'm fine with it for what he's accomplished in the game. Same with PK was in for a shout as one of the third team, and again, it's the same thing as Busquets, and we've already touched on that. But in the holding role, I have Andrea Pirlo, and the thing that tipped him over the edge, and I had the other contender, the last contender I had for that spot was Mascherano, but the thing that tipped it over the edge for me with Pirlo was um, he won. He wasn't a major part of the Serie A team, the AC Milan team that won Serie A in 11. But then he moves, and obviously it was a huge part of the UCL winning team in '07. And you can almost give him the one in '05 as well, because they were clearly the best team in Europe for me. Um, but then he moves to Juve. And as soon as he moves to Juve, I think they go undefeated that season in the 2011-2012 season. Um, I think they draw a lot of games, but they still go undefeated. And then they rattle off all those league titles in a row, which he was instrumental in being the foundation for. Also, a Champions League runner up in 2015, obviously a World Cup winner in '06. And honestly, for me, if the Golden Ball has to go to the player on the winning team, I give it to Pirlo over Cannavaro every day of the week. He was the main creative force in that team. Um, that Italy team, as all Italian teams do, like you say, well rounded. They defend as a team. So when you give it to a defender, I always feel a little bit uneasy because it's such a team effort for teams like that. So I think we should be looking at players who are able to create for teams like that. And Andrea Pirlo was the guy for that team. So I think the right decision was made in giving the golden ball to Zidane. But if it wasn't Zidane, it should have been Pirlo for me. Euro runner-up in 2012, FIFA Pro World 11 in '06. And this is the thing that tipped it over the edge on top of him moving to Juve. As soon as he moves to Juve, he's Serie A Player of the Year 3 times in a row, which is incredible because it was at a time where we probably thought Pirlo was finished. And then he just reinvents, or not he does the same job in that Juve team, but just he does it to such a high level and is such a foundational piece of why Juve dominated Serie A throughout the 2010s. So I have him as my nod over Mascherano in that role. I thought Mascherano was great. Different players, so it might come down to your preference. Now, the two midfielder spots, I so the more attacking of the central midfielders is a debate between Kaka, who we've already talked about um, before. Last Ballon d'Or, obviously, there wasn't Messi or Ronaldo before Modric. And the other one is Thomas Muller for me. Such a versatile player, so you could almost put him anywhere, but he comes into contention as the attacking midfielder sort of role. 11 times league champion, with Bayern rattling off 10 in a row and won another one in 2010. 2 times Champions League winner, which is one more than Kaká in 13 and 20. Wins the World Cup in 2014, third place in 2010. Wins the Golden Boot, the World Cup Golden Boot in 2010, and is the second top scorer in 2014, I think behind James as well. I believe he was Young Player of the Tournament in 2010 World Cup. I think he was the Silver Ball winner in the 2014 World Cup behind Messi. So for resume, for me, it has to go Thomas Muller, and this is obviously a question of preference. So I'm going to edge Thomas Muller in there. But if you want to go peak performance, I don't think it's a question because Kaká, the way he makes football look, was much prettier than Thomas Muller, that's for sure. But Thomas Muller's intelligence. Look, Thomas Muller's a player, and you look at it for any football manager fans and people who've played football manager. You look at all these technical attributes, and they're very low. They're around like 10, 12, maybe 13. But then you look at his mental attributes and his psychological attributes, and they're all like 17, 18. And this is out of 20 for those who don't know the game. So and I believe that that somewhat sums up him up perfectly. Perfectly, he doesn't look pretty when he's doing it, but you can't argue with the results and the resume. So I edge him just over Kaká for that longevity, for that World Cup title, and for how good was in those 2010 and 2014 World Cups. And then on the other side, I think my heart wanted to just put in Steven Gerrard and not even think about it, but that would not be doing this podcast the service that it deserves because the player, and we've touched on this in a previous pod, but the player you've got to think of when you think Steven Gerrard, as much as you think Frank Lampard, is Kevin De Bruyne. So obviously, Steven Gerrard, no Premier League titles, but he does have the Champions League title over De Bruyne, runner-up in the Champions League in '07, which De Bruyne was runner-up in 21. Um, they Steven Gerrard has one PFA Players Player of the Year in '06, but also has a Football Writers Player of the Year in '09. De Bruyne has two Players of the Year in 2020 and 2021. Steven Gerrard made three FIFA Pro World 11s in '07, '08, and '09. As of this point, and I expect this to increase, Kevin De Bruyne has FIFA Pro World 11 has been selected in 2020 and 2021. So I guess if you value, I'm going to edge Steven Gerrard. I fully expect Kevin De Bruyne to overtake him in the years to come, but the only reason is I know Steven Gerrard doesn't have the Premier League titles, but he does have the Champions League title. But Kevin De Bruyne, while he was probably a really important piece in the first three Man City titles, for me, he wasn't the main guy in 18, 19, and 21. That for me was still, well, I think in 21, it was funny. That season was funny because Liverpool were knocked off as contenders and no one else really contended with them. So if you had to say who the main pieces were, it was probably City's defense, and it was probably Ruben Diaz in his first season there. 18 and 19 for me undoubtedly was Sergio Aguero. Scored over 20 goals in the league in both those seasons, and that was obviously the 100 points tally and the 98 points tally to fend off Liverpool the next season. So for me, look, just for that reason, because Gerrard was always the main piece of any Liverpool team he played in, I would just nudge it to Steven Gerrard. But again, if you say Kevin De Bruyne, I'm fine with that. Um, so that's my midfield done. Look, I don't know if you have any input before we go on to the front three on those discussions.
I'm still trying to get over the shock of you picking Muller over Kaka, but like I can understand in terms of like the actual like resume, but if you're going off of eye test, like and yeah, Kaka is the far superior player to Thomas Muller.
Yeah, no, and I said that there wasn't a question in terms of that, but the fact that in my thing, Kaka only had three really exceptional seasons where he's winning things, and obviously he's got a Ballon d'Or, which he has over Thomas Muller, and I don't think Thomas Muller will ever get a Ballon d'Or, and that just speaks to how good Kaka was as a footballer. But for me, he needed to bank more seasons of doing it, and he just didn't. So given that it's of the last 18 years, and as I said at the start, I'm more of a longevity guy if that's the criteria. I just had to edge Thomas Muller over there. But again, that's preference. if you want to be more of a peak guy, then like you say, it's not even a question. Kaka is the more likely candidate or the better candidate for that.
And with
So
the
yeah,
Gerard De Bruyne argument, I think had De Bruyne won the Champions League in the past 2 years, like they
yeah,
bet, like
yeah,
either this year or last year, he would have taken the edge over Gerard because then at least he has the Champions League title to rival him, and then he has so many Premier League titles as well. So
yeah. I agree. Gerard wouldn't have a leg to stand on if De Bruyne had a UCL title as
yeah,
well. Yeah,
um, so but I can understand why De Bruyne doesn't make it in yet, and I think he's been in Man City since what 2016, since Pep arrived, or
yeah,
2015. Yeah, and so he's only really had like what 5-6 seasons where he's been. Actually, he's only had like what 3 or 4 seasons that he's been like one of the main guys, if not the main guy. But I think give him a couple more years, and he'll take that spot. Maybe even be bumped up into the second team.
yeah. I totally agree. So for my front line, and we could do this one of two ways because I have so many candidates for this, and I'm going to need a little bit of help talking this through. We could do two strikers and one behind, or we could just do a normal front three with two wingers and a striker. Um, so my striking candidates, and I know who you're going to say because you've already, unless one of these players is on a team above it. But the striking candidates I have are Karim Benzema, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Sergio Aguero, David Villa, and Fernando Torres. Um, Benzema has 8 league titles, four at Lyon, four at Real Madrid, 5 Champions League titles, obviously. The Player of the Year in Ligue 1 in '08, I believe it was. No World Cups or Euros. And no FIFA Pro World 11 selections, which I fully expect to change whenever they select the upcoming FIFA Pro World 11. Then Zlatan Ibrahimovic, 2 league titles at Juve, which were stripped, but they played the whole season and he still won them. Two, I believe he got 2 at Inter, or was it 3 at Inter? I'd have to fact check that. 1 at Barca and then 4 at PSG. No, I think it might have been 2 at Ajax and then 3 at Inter, 1 at Barca, 4 at PSG. Obviously, Ajax Dutch league. How much credence do you want to put into that? I don't know. Still league titles though, so he's done it in 5 countries, or for 5 teams in 4 countries. FIFA Pro World 11 made one in 2013. Was 3 times Serie A Player of the Year and 3 times League One Player of the Year, so 6 Players of the Year. No World Cups or Euros, but plays for Sweden, so how much can you hold that against him? The next candidate, Sergio Aguero, has no individual awards really to his name, but has 5 Premier League titles, has one of the most iconic moments in footballing history. I don't think that's hyperbole to say that. The way they won the title in 2012. And I would say was at least 1A or 1B in all 5 of those title winning teams. And the final 2 that he was on are all time great title winning teams in that City Centurions in 2018 and then the title defense in 2019 where they rack up 98 points, and he's I believe he's the top scorer at the club, and he's scored over 20 goals in the Premier League in those 2 seasons as well. So he would be somewhat. David Villa we've already talked about, and Fernando Torres we've already touched on. Funny thing is, I think Torres could be knocked out of this, even though he's made the most FIFA Pro World 11s. He made 2, one in '08 and one in '09. And also won a World Cup and was part of both Euro squads, which he has over David Villa, who was only part of one of those Euro squads. Um, Obviously, a bit of a fake top goal scorer of the 2012 Euros because there was only 3 goals, and I think there was 5 players tied on that. David Villa was top scorer in the '08 Euros. Um, so I think just because David Villa was a more important part of Barcelona's 2011 Champions League winning team, I think you'd put him above Torres. Now, the question for me, it comes down to Benzema versus Aguero. Um, Aguero, I kind of want to put in because I want to acknowledge Manchester City in the last decade, but it's hard to leave Karim Benzema off. So, with that said, I'll move on to the other candidates who aren't strikers before we dive into the discussion on how to finish this team off. I have, well, this guy can play as a striker, though, but he normally plays on the wing, and that's Kylian Mbappe. He's already got 5 league titles, one at Monaco, which we can't forget, and then the 4 that he's won at PSG since he's been there. 2 FIFA Pro World 11s in 18 and 19, Liga and Player of the Year in 19, 21, and 22, and a World Cup winner in 2018, and was arguably the best player on that World Cup winning team at such a young age as well, which is incredible. I had to put this guy in, and he might get dinged for personal preferences, but what he's already accomplished in the game is no mean feat, and that's Neymar. Um, 2 league titles in Spain before winning 4 league titles in France. Has won Champions League to his name in 2015 as part of that great team. But I also don't want to snub his Copa Libertadores win in 2011 with Santos. And by mentioning that, we've got to also mention just how sick young Neymar was. He was so exciting to watch, young Neymar. And another player, the who's on this list, the younger version of them, was awesome to watch. But that goal that he won the Puskás Award for, I think in 2011, with Santos, was just something stupid to watch. And he was so exciting to watch when he was younger, before all the fame and the glitz and the glamour, really. 2 FIFA Pro World 11s, 15 and 17, and Player of the Season in Liga in 2018, but no international honours to his name. So that is a ding against Mbappe, and obviously Mbappe has more Player of the Years for the same team as well. But I guess Neymar really gets in on that list. The only thing he's got over him is continental club champion in 2 continents, which I'm always impressed by. I know that the Champions League is a higher accolade than the Copa Libertadores, but still, in terms of club football, in terms of continental club football, that's definitely the second best one to win. And when you could transfer it over 2 continents, I think that's pretty impressive. Much like the next guy on the list has done as well. I have Ronaldinho, who's in conversation for one of these spots. If this was 20 years like your list, there wouldn't be a conversation. Ronaldinho would be in one of the 3 teams, probably first team as well. Still to this day, for me, the most exciting footballer I've seen play the game. And he was exciting, but did it in a way that actually helped the team, which I always found really fun. Still one of my favorite players to watch of all time. 2 La Liga titles and a Serie A title for AC Milan in 2011, although not a huge part of that 2011 AC Milan winning team. I think under 20 appearances in the league that season. The one UCL title in '06, definitely the major part of that UCL title winning team, along with a few others, but I would say he was the main part. FIFA Pro World 11, '05, '06, '07, and a Ballon d'Or to his name in '05. And the final guy on the list, and you put him in your team, Gareth Bale. 3 league titles for Real Madrid, although not a big part of the last one in 2022. 5 UCL titles, again, not a big part of the last one, but a pretty big part of the other, like the 2014 title. He scores the go-ahead goal in extra time against Atletico, and Ronaldo's the one who puts a cherry on top at the end, and he's got the enduring image of him taking his shirt off. But Gareth Bale was the big part, and again in the 2018 final, he scores the go-ahead goal with arguably the greatest goal in Champions League final history with that bicycle kick, which is just staggering. Never really got his dues for his time at Real Madrid. But again, he was the other young player who was just unbelievable to watch. The way he played the number 10 a lot for Tottenham, and that's where he won the PFA Player of the Year in 11 and 13, and also the Football Writers Player of the Year in 2013, completing the clean sweep that year. But he played that season, he played a lot of number 10. And the enduring image I have, apart from all the long range goals with that absolute belter of a left foot, is the way he would drive the ball through the middle of the pitch. And he kept it so, it was like watching Messi with not as great a control of the ball, but with more power. It was like Messi on steroids. And for me, I preferred watching that over Messi. I know Messi, like, you always marvel at how good Messi was back in the day. But for personal eye test and preference, I prefer watching those guys with power who can just drive a ball like through people. Like Ronaldinho used to do it as well. There's one goal that Ronaldinho scored for Barca, I think in the group stages against Chelsea of the Champions League, where he literally just runs through John Terry and then just belts it past Petr Cech. So um, Gareth Bale in his younger days was much like that. So much fun to watch. I mean, not quite on the same probably footballing level as Ronaldinho, but has all the acclaim and the accolades to go with it. So I guess it's a 9-person list. I'm pretty sure you're going to say Ronaldinho has to be in that team. I don't disagree with that. So I guess we have 2 spots left to fill, and I want your input onto who you think should be filling them.
Yeah, Ronaldinho's you need to pen him in, and personally, I can't believe that he's not in either your
It's
first or
because
second team, and he's even been
if we're
considered for your third team.
if we're starting 0405, it takes out a World Cup for him, and it takes out that 0304 season where he was really special as well.
Doesn't matter. Even the very start, like he had like what 2, potentially 3 peak seasons from when you're counting. Yeah,
It's like Kaka. It's the
not a
same as
question.
Kaka, isn't it?
Yeah, true, but still, since we're going last 20, not last 15, he needs to be on that list like 100%. For the other two, so he's either going to be playing on the left or the right. He generally played on the left.
Well, he could play as the 10 as well.
If we go for two, isn't Muller your 10?
Well, Muller could play as one of the central midfielders in a narrow diamond.
Ugh.
If we're playing that. Or you could play a box midfield like Brazil used to do.
I don't know. I always found Muller as like a 9.5, 10 rather than like a midfielder.
Yeah, but he'd fulfill the same role, but his starting position on the team sheet would be the left side of it. It would be a box, I guess. It doesn't matter.
I'm just trying to. Benzema's been very good for like the last 10 years since he first came to Real. Like he had a slow start at Real, but even at Lyon, he was like he was a bit of a beast at Lyon. Always played second fiddle to Ronaldo, and then later on Ronaldo and Benzema. And then had his breakout season last year. Maybe even the year before he had a bit of a breakout.
But had a legendary season last year.
Yeah. See, if we were to do this list in late December, after we see what happens at the World Cup, it'd be interesting whether Benzema is then
Yeah,
considered like for the second
yeah,
team or over the
definitely.
first team. So look, I know I picked Villa, but Benzema is a very, very, very good shout um,
So
for that
then you've got
central.
Ronaldinho. Yeah, you've got Ronaldinho and Benzema. So for the last spot, you've got Mbappe, Neymar, Bale. I'm personally going to knock out Villa and Torres. We've already talked enough about Villa. I know you love him,
Yeah,
and I love him too. He's a great player. So I'm going to limit it to Ibrahimovic, Mbappe, Neymar, and Bale.
yeah, but Benzema's playing through the middle, so you're pretty much limiting it to Bale, Mbappe, and Neymar.
No, but if you pick Ibrahimovic, you can play Benzema and Ibrahimovic up front, and Ronaldinho as the 10. So it's a narrow diamond in the midfield. It just changes the shape. Or you play Muller and Ronaldinho as two tens,
For
and Gerrard can
me,
sit next to Pirlo.
for me, it's between Neymar and Mbappe.
That's fair. That's fair because, like I said earlier, I think Lewandowski corrected Ibrahimovic somewhat, and I love Ibrahimovic. And if you're going off eye test and style, then Ibrahimovic is definitely your man over Lewandowski. But if you're going off resume and goals and doing it in a harder league, I think Lewandowski's your guy. So I'm fair. I'm happy with that. Who would you pick out of Neymar and Mbappe?
Mbappe's similar to Bale and Ronaldinho in the way that they can drive with power and pace at defenses, whereas but then like for instance, Ronaldinho has that ability to drive with pace and power, but he also has that ability to drive with finesse and trickery the same way that that Neymar has. So he has the combination of Neymar of the style of Neymar and Mbappe of taking players on.
So you're not putting Aguero in the conversation at all, as a nod to that.
Look,
Because
but it's
full
your team.
disclosure,
It's your team though, so it
yeah,
depends
I
how
know. I
what
just want
formation you want to play.
he's my only thing with Aguero. Full disclosure, I will have no Manchester City players of the last 10 years if Aguero does not get in. So that's the only thing that's killing me. And like, obviously, Aguero is a fantastic forward. But the no individual awards, while it's not his fault and he probably should have got one or two nods, it's kind of a killer when you look back in the history books that this guy didn't win any individual awards in his time.
Yeah, but like again, it depends what formation you want to play. So it
Okay,
depends. It
all right.
depends whether you want to go with two forwards or you want to go with three forwards. So if you want to have
Yeah, I'm
someone
going.
occupying on the
Okay.
wing.
Yeah, I've made a decision. I'm going Benzema and Aguero up front with Ronaldinho in behind. I don't feel bad about it because Mbappe has plenty of time to overtake, and he will. I'm pretty sure of that. And Neymar, I don't feel bad because his last 5 years or so, he has pissed away his career. Even though he was awesome at the start of his career, but he has just
How
like let himself go.
how does that affect the functionality of your team? Because you know how like my team was a 4-4-2, and like I sort of explained that like Giggs and Bale can cut in on the inside and play more in the middle, and that allows Marcelo and Cafu to or you're not really worrying about the functionality.
No, I'm worrying about it somewhat, but here's the thing: Jordi Alba is so good that he can either overlap down the left, or he can come in and help Pirlo in midfield. Gerard, like we said, has the versatility to do all the roles in midfield. So he can, when needed, he can sit next to Pirlo. When needed, he can be box to box. And even if he does go box to box, Zanetti can also come in from the other side, much like Man City do with their fullbacks now, and help Pirlo in midfield. And then that sort of frees up Thomas Muller and Ronaldinho to go and help the front too. So it's attacking, no doubt, but I think it's functional.
So you want to give us your 11 just once more?
Yeah, so it's Buffon,
Mm-hmm.
it's Zanetti, it's Ferdinand, it's Chiellini, Alba, Gerrard, Pirlo, Muller, Ronaldinho, Aguero, Benzema.
Okay, so you're going like a really narrow formation.
Yeah, it's either a box or a narrow diamond in that midfield.
Yeah, so like
Whatever you think will
the
work
width
best.
is being provided by your left and right backs,
Yep. And Benzema's good at drifting out and finding spaces out there as well.
and
So
Ronaldinho as well.
and Ronaldinho as well, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
And Muller can fill in any role across the front. That's what makes him such a good player. He's so intelligent. So
Yeah, and I guess in your formation, having Ronaldinho and Kaká doesn't really. I feel like it doesn't function.
yeah, see if you picked Kaká over Muller, it would pretty much be the same thing. It would just have to be a box midfield like Brazil used to play, but
Yeah.
it's not really a problem. So, upon looking at the time in the bottom right hand corner of my screen, um, obviously, me and Nev are absolute blabbermouths, and we can talk about the last 20 odd years of football until, I don't know, until next year. And we're only finishing July now. So, like we did with the first, second, and third teams of the year for last year, we're gonna leave it here and we're gonna keep you in suspense. I promise it's not our intention when we go into the pods to leave everyone in suspense about what our second and first teams are. But we just talked the legs off the chair. We've talked your ears off. You're probably sick of our voices by now, so I think this will be a good time to leave it after going through our third teams. Our plan is obviously Nev's away, going to one of those beautiful Croatian beaches. So we're going to leave it here. And then when we're back in about a week and a day, a week and 2 days, a week and a half, whatever it is, obviously we're going to have live football to talk about. So we'll probably do a recap of what we've seen in the first weeks of many of the major European leagues. And then we'll probably give you our second team after that. And then obviously we normally do 2 pods a week. So in the um, late week pod where we normally preview the weekend's games, we'll give you our first team in that. So we'll spread it across 3 pods. But um, obviously, as you can tell by the fact that we've talked for so long, we had an absolute blast going down memory lane and talking about all these things that we've seen in our times of being absolute fanatics of football. So before you want to destroy your headphones and never listen to my voice again, I'm going to sign off here. Nev, do you have any last words for the listeners?
Just quick prediction for the Community Shield that's happening in a couple hours. Well, today.
I
Liverpool City.
predict
Who do you think?
I predict a good game. From what I've seen in the preseason, Liverpool and City don't look like they even stopped for an off season. They were playing some very good stuff from the limited stuff that I saw from preseason. But I'm predicting a pretty high intensity game for a Community Shield, and my hope is that Liverpool win, but my head says that City will probably win. So let's hope
And
that my heart wins out.
will Haaland and Nunez start? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm going to say they both start.
All right. And the other amazing game that's coming up, the Emirates Cup between Arsenal and Sevilla. Who do you think is going to win there?
Oh man, all I know is I don't know if it's out yet, but I can't wait to watch All or Nothing because I've watched some of those crappy Gimme Sport articles, and they're loving Arteta after seeing it. So
I think it
let's see
comes
if
out next month. So
yeah, let's see if he can turn me around from what I've seen on that.
yeah. Well, I'm definitely intrigued to watch it, but like yeah, look, there's two I'm obviously interested in the Arsenal Sevilla. That should be a decent game. I know it's like considered a friendly, but I think it should be intriguing to watch. And yeah, the Community Shield as well. And then yeah, it's a week until the leagues restart again. So
Crazy.
it's exciting, and yeah, I hope that both games today are full of goals and good play.
Yeah, and hopefully the listeners are probably not as excited, but hopefully they're excited to listen to our second and first teams of the last 20 odd years.
Hopefully, and
But
then they can
no doubt
debate. They can
we can't
debate
wait for
us.
football to start again.
Yeah, and then
Huh?
they can debate us on our picks. They can debate us
Yeah,
already on our
please
team three
leave.
picks.
I would love to hear some of the comments and look at some of the comments of people who have listened to this podcast because I love getting into debates about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, like
And
who?
I love like having my perspective changed a little bit. So if you've got anything interesting to say about our picks, please leave comments on what we've discussed tonight. That would be great.
It'll be interesting. Caleb, it's been a pleasure.
But it really has. Can't wait to do this again when you're back. Enjoy your time away. I'm sure you will. And we'll be back not next week, but the week after to wrap up what we've seen in the major leagues and also wrap up these teams. But for now, I bid you and everyone listening farewell and happy viewing of the Community Shield or whatever football you might be watching. And we'll talk to you again soon, guys. Thanks for tuning in.